Alignment from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello there, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio, and we're live in our CBC studios downtown here in the city of Winnipeg. Thanks for joining us on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and on YouTube. Let's say good morning to the team, and then we'll talk a bit about the weather today, which is warm, spoiler alert, but maybe a little slick. Let's say hello to Abby Adeyemi, our senior tech behind the controls. Hey, Abby. Abby's also going to be on air covering the weather. Mr. Travis Peterson makes his triumphant return to the early hours, saying hello to you there on YouTube. If you watch the show streaming, then say hi to Travis. He's producing this morning. And Sierra Sanders will join us soon as well. She's directing the program, and she'll be on the air covering your commute. Well, as promised, let's have a quick look at the weather, and then we'll turn our attention to headlines. Mix of sun and cloud for today, becoming cloudy near noon, and a high of 2 degrees. So today's the day we get above normal. Felt like spring on the way in driving. It was pretty wet out there in Winnipeg. In Brandon, cloudy today, a high of 3 for you. So you're also going to have a mild day. And up in Thompson, cloudy as well. You've got a chance of flurries. Your day's different. Your temperature will fall to about minus 19 this afternoon. And now at 2 minutes to 6 o'clock, let's go to Heather Wells for those headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the number of measles cases in Manitoba is swelling again as the province reaches the 1-year mark of its outbreak. Infections peaked in May before dropping in the fall. And while some provinces have declared their outbreaks over, the disease is still circulating in this province. 51 cases so far in the new year. We'll hear more about what we maybe should be doing. That's coming up as well. Dozens of support workers in Winnipeg are helping make the evacuation more comfortable for elders and young families from Pimicikamak. We're going to hear about elders in particular, what it is they need. That's coming up in our next local news at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather. In national and international news, in a moment on World Report, we're likely to hear more about what's happening with the EV incentives from the federal government that are about to change the plans. That means you might see fewer electric cars on Manitoba roads. We'll hear more about how that federal mandate is likely to change and also the impact through a Manitoba lens. Also, teaching the value of your kids talking to strangers and also when to be cautious. That's on our parenting column first hour.
On cue.
I'm Garby Bailey in for Tom Power. Tanya Tahak has always turned lived experience into art, in music, on the page, and now on stage. She joins us to talk about Split Tooth, her acclaimed book based in part on her own personal journals, and how she's bringing that story to life on stage.
And just let the sound take me.
Cue, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning.
Police officers have been arrested.
Several Toronto police officers have been arrested. It is in connection with the tow truck industry. The Toronto Police Association confirms it is aware of the arrests and says it will ensure due process. Michelle Song reports.
Multiple sources tell CBC News as many as 9 members of Toronto Police are arrested over charges related to violent crimes involving the tow trucking industry in the Greater Toronto area. Those officers are accused of trafficking, leaking addresses to hitmen, and leaking police officer addresses, as well as conspiracy to murder a unit commander at Toronto's South Detention Centre. A source says York Regional Police led the investigation, and it will be holding a press conference today with Toronto Police Service. CBC News is not naming the sources as they are not authorized to share details publicly. Frank Cormier is a criminology professor at the University of Manitoba.
Police are notoriously reluctant, to investigate their own and charge their own unless, the evidence is overwhelmingly clear.
The towing industry has been plagued by violence across the Greater Toronto area. Toronto police arrested 20 people last summer over allegations of planning and organizing violent acts in the towing industry. More than 100 charges were laid. Ian Scott is the former director of the Special Investigations Unit.
These very serious sets of charges suggest that there needs to be more oversight in the police department, and there also needs to be much more oversight of the towing industry.
Sources say 2 of the officers appeared in court Wednesday, and the other officers will be appearing in court today. Michelle Song, CBC News, Toronto.
U.S. President Donald Trump is responding to pressure over immigration enforcement in Minneapolis. In a new interview, Trump defended his approach. He also answered questions on Iran. CBC's Willie Lowry joins us from Washington. And Willie, Trump was asked about the fallout in Minneapolis. What did he say?
Yeah, President Donald Trump acknowledged that a softer approach in Minnesota might have been better. This, of course, comes after 2 U.S. citizens were killed by ICE agents there last month, but he doubled down on the need for his immigration crackdown.
We allowed to come into our country people the likes of which no country would accept, and we're getting them out.
Trump said in the wake of Minneapolis he no longer wants to force his way into cities, but rather wait for local and state officials to request federal help.
Trump was also asked about the negotiations with Iran. What did he say?
Trump had strong words for the supreme leader of Iran.
I would say he should be very worried, yeah, he should be. As you know, they're negotiating with us.
The U.S. president has been supportive of Iranian protesters and threatened to use U.S. military might to further deter Iran's nuclear ambitions. The countries are set to meet tomorrow in Oman for much anticipated talks. The American delegation will be led by the U.S. Special Envoy for the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, and the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. The Iranians by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. These will be the first talks since Washington bombed Iran's nuclear facilities back in June.
Thank you, Willie.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Willie Lowry in Washington. Negotiators from Russia and Ukraine are holding a second day of U.S. brokered peace talks in Abu Dhabi. The discussions come as Russian forces step up attacks on Ukraine's power grid. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says 55,000 Ukrainian troops have been killed since the invasion nearly 4 years ago. Zelensky is again urging allies to increase pressure on Moscow to end the war. A candlelight vigil was held last night at a church in Tucson, Arizona. People gathered to pray for the safe return of Nancy Guthrie. She's the mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. Police say she may have been kidnapped. The Guthrie family has released a video addressing those who may be holding her.
We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her.
Nancy Guthrie was last seen Saturday night. A program designed to prevent homelessness is marking a second year of success in Ottawa. The Ottawa Mission provides skills training to newcomers. The program helps them move into stable full-time work. Liam Baker has the story.
Hakeem Lubwama demonstrates his skills with a miter saw at the Ottawa Mission. Over the course of 4 months, he learned the basics of drywalling, painting, electrical work, and plumbing.
And in my role,
4 years after moving to Canada from Uganda, Lubwama was selected as the valedictorian for the Maintenance Service Program's second graduating class. He says his prior career as a civil engineer will help him in his new role as a building superintendent.
So integrating the knowledge of a building right from the foundation to it rising. So I'm able to read the drawings. I'm able to understand the codes of all the places in the building. So it is an integration, and it's something I find fun.
The free program is meant for people who are at risk of homelessness, many of whom are newcomers. Andy Higgs is the Ottawa Mission's maintenance manager and an instructor in the program. His dream is for the program to expand its course offerings.
We are filling a need that we have. It won't stop. We will continue. We will do trades training. We've got big goals down the road, but right now the building superintendent's doing really well.
The second ever graduating class consisted of 9 students, all of whom now have full-time jobs as superintendents. Liam Baker, CBC News, Ottawa.
Dozens of people in Yukon say packages they mailed weeks ago never arrived. Canada Post confirms police are investigating what happened to these parcels. As Isabella Calisi reports, the Postal Service became aware of the missing packages after customers complained.
Doesn't Canada Post track the mail? Is it just up to us with our receipts and our tracking numbers?
Annie Elliston mailed Christmas gifts to her family in southern BC on December 18th. And more than a month later, the tracking numbers still say the packages haven't left Whitehorse. She posted on Facebook and got dozens of responses from people who said they were dealing with the same thing. So Ellison called up Canada Post.
The fact that Canada Post didn't realize that this high number of parcels had disappeared en route before individuals and myself started reporting missing parcels.
Canada Post then confirmed with the CBC that police are investigating. Stephanie Lawson also had 2 packages destined for her family go missing. And as a small business owner, she says disappearing parcels can mean major added costs.
If I was shipping out to a customer, then likely I would have had to refund my customer, taken on the shipping cost, lost that sale, all for a package that I can't get anything back for.
Lawson says without photos, receipts, and tracking numbers, it can be hard to claim insurance on what you've lost.
It's not the customer's always right in their case.
The RCMP and Canada Post would not comment, citing the active investigation. Isabella Calisi, CBC News, Whitehorse.
We're getting more information this morning about the condition of one of Canada's Olympic athletes. Snowboarder Mark McMorris crashed during big air training last night at Milano Cortina. McMorris was taken off the course on a stretcher. Sarah Levitt has this update.
It's game time decision for Mark McMorris tonight at the Big Air qualifiers. We're learning more about what happened to him at a practice last night. Sounds like he landed the jump but caught an edge on his snowboard that brought him down hard. Brendan Matthews is with Canada Snowboard.
As a precaution in our sport, it's pretty standard protocol to be assisted off the hill just to make sure that they're doing everything by the book.
Big Air is high risk, high reward. The snowboarders are on a structure 50 meters high and take off a ramp doing tricks while also trying to get as much air and distance as possible. The Canadian Olympic Committee says McMorris went to hospital last night and did a round of tests before being released. We're told this morning he's feeling pretty good, but we don't know yet if he'll compete in the qualification round tonight. A decision will be made by 4 p.m. local time. This is McMorris's 4th Olympic appearance. He has 3 bronze medals from the previous games, and he's coming off a great season, taking home slope-style gold at X Games just a week and a half ago. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Livigno, Italy.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Well, we've got a one-day wonder of warmth across southern Manitoba here as we're above zero. Thanks for joining us this morning on Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube, and we will be above zero later today. Right now, Winnipeg's at -2, but McCreary's already there, 6 degrees in McCreary this morning. What a February 5th we have on our hands. Well, this hour on the show, as you've been hearing on World Report, we are expecting the Prime Minister to talk more about what he's planning for his new strategy for automobile sales in this country and the big changes that are coming to the EVs, fuel efficient standards and credits being put in place of rebates. So what is that actually going to mean, and what will the impact be here in Manitoba? We'll have that discussion to begin. In addition, on our parenting column this hour, teaching your kids the value of talking to strangers, but also how to be cautious. What does that look like in 2026? We will have a conversation about it. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, who's in our news center with other story developments. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, high school students in Hanover School Division no longer have internet overnight on school-issued laptops. Online access is restricted between midnight and 6 in the morning. Assistant Superintendent Marlon Adrian says the division felt it was right to set overnight boundaries for learning devices. He says it's also meant to improve students' sleeping habits. As Manitoba's premier talks up the economic benefits of a Port of Churchill expansion, a Winnipeg economist warns It's going to take some time for tax revenue to flow into provincial coffers if the mega project goes ahead. Philip Serene at the University of Winnipeg says it'll take 5 to 10 years before the benefits start. We'll hear more in our next local news coming up at 6:30.
What was it like for you walking out the door this morning?
Isn't it gorgeous?
Yeah, I know. And driving here, it was wet. And I know we always still have to be cautious at this time of year, but it was hard not to just sort of be like, oh, a spring drive. I'm going to relax a little.
Enjoyable, right? Except it is messy. You'll need your wiper fluid.
For sure. Dirty out there. Okay, let's find out what the rest of the day is going to bring. Abby Adiemi's in with a forecast.
Yeah, good morning, Marcy. We're looking at a tale of two systems today, actually. We see mild conditions in the southern part of the province, and then you track it up north. You're going to see most of the regions bracing for noticeable wind chills and blowing snow coming towards Churchill and surrounding regions. Today, we're already spotting light snow falling in that part of the province. For Winnipeg right now, we're looking at temperatures around -3 and +1 in a lot of regions. Some areas even tracking already like a 0 in Winnipeg. So it's technically between 0 and -6 wherever you are in the city. Expect it to warm up to 2 degrees by lunchtime. We'll see the skies turn mostly cloudy by midday. Some light winds will be coming from the northwest, and it's just going to keep things fresh. But looking ahead, we're going to see some freezing rain arrive tonight. And across the southern regions, we're seeing most of the regions sit between -4 and 2 degrees at this time. We're tracking -10 around Steinbach for now. For the Interlake region, we're looking at highs climbing close to 4 degrees later. Well, up north, temperatures sitting between 0 and -20 with, wind chills close to -39 in Churchill and Tuduli Lake later today. So, Mercy, it's more like the system, the province is in for that mild mix of sun and clouds in the southern part. And then we're going to see the north still locked into the deep freeze. So we need to take that into consideration for folks up north. But for Winnipeg right now, we're tracking -6 in some parts of the city. We're tracking -1 and we're tracking 0 in some parts of the city.
So Abby's saying don't gloat too much because it's cold up north, remember.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Let's get into what's going on with Sierra Sanders in our commute. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy. Not hearing about anything too major going on, no major backups or situations right now as we kick off the show this fine and warm Thursday morning, which I will take. But I want to take a little step back and look at yesterday. Yesterday in the evening / afternoon, westbound Notre Dame at Langside. There's that big water main break that happened, and we heard from someone, if you were listening to the news, that the water was knee deep at one point. And so crews were getting to work on that yesterday, but we don't know what it's looking like right now. So if you're in that area, I'd love to know what you're seeing there. So that's westbound Notre Dame at Langside. There's a big water main break yesterday, caused a lot of backups. Water was we heard from someone, water was knee deep, so it was a big water main break, but we don't know what it's looking like this morning. So if you have an idea, if you're in the area, I'd love to hear what it's looking like there and what folks can expect on their drive this morning. Quick look at the highways from Manitoba 511. You're seeing a lot of partly covered highways north of Winnipeg, northeast of Winnipeg. So in the Beausejour area, you're seeing some partly covered highways. Enola, that's what you're seeing over there. Lockport, partly covered. Around the Tyndall area, Highway 44, you might be seeing some fully covered highways as well. And then if we look south as you head towards the U.S.-Canada border, we are seeing partly covered as well. So you want to be aware of that if you're getting out on the highways today, and make sure to check Manitoba 511 before you make your way out on the highways. But looking back here in the city, if you're in the city or if you're anywhere else in the province and something pops up on your drive, give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, Prime Minister Mark Carney looks like he's going to be scrapping an electric vehicle mandate. In fact, at 9 o'clock this morning, he'll talk about the new direction. This mandate was introduced by the Trudeau government in 2023. The plan for the Canadian auto sector was to hit 60% EV sales by 2030. So they were mandated to try to get there, and 100% by 2035. Now, in September, Carney paused those targets. He announced a 60-day review. He said the auto sector in Canada had had enough on their plate dealing with the threat of the Trump tariffs. The Prime Minister is yet to officially announce the scrapping of the project, but he is already talking about what might replace it. So CBC is reporting he's looking at fuel efficiency standards and credits for auto manufacturers. So basically, if they move toward making more EVs and meeting those standards, they'll have some bonuses or benefits rather to doing that. So we're going to talk to James Hart to start the show, president of the Manitoba Electric Vehicle Association, about this. Good morning.
Good morning.
So what's your reaction to changing this program, as looking what he's going to do?
There's both positives and negatives to it. On the positive side, it's going to, if it opens up the door to more EVs like the Chinese EVs, which are inexpensive, it could actually work out not bad. It is disappointing that there's no massive incentive for the manufacturers to actually produce EVs, which could limit choice for people looking at purchasing their next electric vehicle.
So you think this could lead to fewer Canadian-made electric vehicles on the road when you're talking about choice, is that right?
Possibly. We're already looking at fewer Canadian-made any vehicles right now with what's going on south of the border. But there is talks that Mark Carney has made and alluded to that some of these Chinese manufacturers might start producing in Canada.
I guess the big unknown here, James, is whether or not this will work better than the last mandate. Because it's one thing to say you have to hit these targets, this is mandated. It's another thing to say we're going to give you a credit if you manage to, meet these fuel efficiency standards and make more EVs here. What do you have a thought on whether or not that actually might be a better incentive?
So it really depends on what the credits look like. If it's kind of depending on the vehicle, let's say one large Dodge Ram 3500, very inefficient fuel vehicle, you have to sell 2 or 3 EVs, then it's not too bad, right? Where if it's like a 1-to-1, even that is not bad. It depends what that trade looks like. That still might lead to quite a bit of choices for us.
What's the process like to buy an EV in Manitoba right now? Are they readily available? Is there a long wait list? What's your choice like? What's your understanding of it?
So the only wait list I've heard so far is of people that have very specific needs. I want this color. I want these choices, right? Other than that, we have a fair amount of choices. There is still quite a bit of dealerships here in Winnipeg that do have EVs on their lot. It seems to be dying down quite a bit. I know after the federal incentive went away last year, we went from pretty much all the dealerships having something to now some of the dealerships carrying nothing and other dealerships really stepping up and carrying way more vehicles. So still quite a bit of choice, a little harder in the rural communities, which will probably get worse depending on how this looks like. I know some dealerships in the rural communities were very much anti-EV and very much kind of announced it.
Why do you think it'll get worse?
There's no incentive, right? Like with the mandate, even with the mandate being paused, it was still maybe it's coming back, right? So they would still bring in a little bit, where if the mandate's gone, they might work on just selling more vehicles in the urban environment versus the rural. Yeah.
Got it. So we'll have to see what happens and where these where the new credits are going to go and those details that aren't coming out till 9:00 today. You nodded to price a little bit at the beginning of the conversation, James, but what do you think about what consumers can expect in regards to pricing of EVs, given what we're talking about and also the expansion of the Chinese market here?
So it's really hard to say. I don't know if price is going to change much. And depending on how the Chinese EVs come in, if it comes in fairly quickly, the price, I know Mark Carney is shooting for 50% under $35,000, where if we can see those vehicles right away, I think the other manufacturers are going to have to step up and lower their prices, which is going to be good for everybody.
Thanks for weighing in. And I got to say, if people are watching on YouTube, you've given us so much eye candy. What is on the wall behind you in that room? It's awesome. Do you have a car collection of some kind?
So these are all Hot wheel cars that are electric Hot Wheel cars that when we go out to car shows, we like to hand out to kids around there. Yeah.
I love that. Do they come with little plugs and stuff?
No, unfortunately not.
Oh, I wish they did. How many do you have around?
Last I counted was over 200, but I also have a whole duffel bag full. So probably about 400 or 500.
Well, what a fantastic display. I was going to ask you if they were all electric, but I thought they can't make that many electric Hot Wheels, but I guess they can.
There is also more out there that I don't have.
That's so cool. And you've also got a reserve parking sign for an EV with the plug hanging out there too.
Yeah.
So you're representing well with your backdrop on our YouTube stream. Well, we'll see what the Prime Minister says later today. James, thanks for starting our show. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
That's James Hart with us, president of Manitoba's Electric Vehicle Association. The Prime Minister, I misspoke there. The Prime Minister is speaking later this morning, Mark Carney, at 9 o'clock our time. It is right now 6:22 a.m. on 89.3 FM, 9:90 a.m. on that app and on YouTube. And it is -2 and mainly clear in Winnipeg. We're headed for a high of 2 above. Well, next on the show, there's a stereotype about young people, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, that they don't know how to talk face-to-face to actual human beings. Now, maybe because many are on their phones as a result, maybe some are anxious to have a face-to-face conversation. But then again, it could be their Gen X and millennial parents who taught them the whole stranger danger thing a little bit too much. Joining us with some advice on how to help kids and teens get better at having conversations with people that they don't know and still staying safe is our parenting columnist, Esper Bergman, father of 3, author of Special Topics and Being a Parent, Queer and Tender Guide to Things I've Learned About Parenting Mostly the Hard Way. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I said stranger danger once in the air because I'm a Gen Xer, and I had all these people call the station and say, like, we don't say that anymore. Stop sowing the fear. What do you think the impact of that is, on kids and, when we pass that along?
Yeah, I think stranger danger started out as a good idea, right? It was a public health campaign in the 80s when parenting was very obedience-based to remind children that just because an adult told you to do something, it didn't mean you had to do it. Unfortunately, what we have now is, I think, really all that we've got left is sort of strangers are dangerous, and that's not great. One, I think it does create a lot of fear and anxiety in both parents and kids about the idea that anyone they don't know is a potential danger. And that's right. That's not true. And the really hard news, and it's hard to talk about, but 94%, like if something bad is going to happen to a child, 94% of the time it's someone they already know. And so when we teach kids that strangers are bad and people they know are good, then when something bad happens with someone who they already know, it's really hard for them to figure out how to tell somebody and how to understand that something bad has happened.
I want to get right to your experiences with your kids because you always offer great examples. So what do you do to encourage the kids to talk to new people, but also to, what are the things that you might actually say in a conversation like that?
I think it's so helpful to really talk to kids, not just about what's okay, but also about what's not okay, because it gives them sort of a confidence zone where they can safely operate. So one thing, we never said don't talk to strangers, but we did say never go anywhere with anyone unless your parents know about it, like in the moment and have said it's okay. We also said no one should ever ask you to keep a secret from us. Now, you got to tell the grandparents and the other trusted adults about this, because otherwise you get, Nana says, okay, we're going to have ice cream, but it's a secret. And then you have a 6-year-old in Baskin Robbins yelling, I don't keep secrets from my parents.
Yes.
Which, right, like, hilarious, but also no one should ask a kid ever to do something that they can never tell their parents. And helping them know what some other red flags are, like No one should ask you, what's your address? Or are you here alone? And I think that when kids know, okay, these things are not okay, it really helps them to feel confident that they sort of know where the boundaries are.
Well, what are the small ways that you can encourage the kids then to talk to strangers in a positive way? Like where might those exchanges and opportunities exist in their lives, and depending on age, I guess?
Right around, that like 5, 6, 7, I'm a big kid, I want to do big kid stuff age. That's a great time to get them started. Let them order their own donut. Pull up in front of the pizza place and let them run in and pick up the takeout order. Put them in an activity where maybe they don't know a lot of other kids, or maybe they just have like one buddy. So they're operating, again, like their parents are there or other trusted adults are there. There are people to protect them, but they get to have some experience in talking to people and figuring it out. That's so important to learn when they're young.
What are the benefits overall? Obviously, you've already highlighted a few of them with your examples, but why should we encourage our kids to do this, to talk to strangers, to not fear it?
Well, for one thing, I mean, it's the gateway to a lot of very nice stuff, including making new friends, knowing your neighbors, being in community. But also, eventually we send them out into the world. And it is incredibly important for kids to be able to sort of figure out and have like their own internal sense of what kinds of interactions feel okay and what kinds of interactions, as my teenager would say, when the vibes are off. You sort of want them to be able to recognize from their experience what does feel okay and what doesn't, so that, when they're out and on their own, they know, okay, this doesn't feel cool. I'm just going to leave, and to trust that.
Thank you very much for your advice today on the Parenting Column. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Esper Bergman, father of 3, author of Special Topics and Being a Parent, Queer and Tender Guide to Things I've Learned About Parenting, Mostly the Hard Way is the title of the book. We are coming up to 6:30 and news time with Heather Wells with the very latest. Remember, anytime online at cbc.ca/Manitoba. And then Phil DeMont is in for Christely Ramlakan this morning with business news. We just had that conversation about the EVs and what is about to be changing. We're going to continue that with Phil as he looks at Ottawa scrapping the mandate around electric vehicles and what it might mean overall for the auto sector in this country. So we're going to look at that in a wider way. In addition, a lot of restaurant chains so far this year in Canada and also in the United States are closing. So we're going to look more at the trend of that and what is behind that. And with the Olympic medals, you get gold, silver, or bronze. And with those prices increasing, does it mean the medals are actually worth more? We're going to have that look. Remember, the games start tomorrow. We will have special Olympic updates. CBC is carrying all the action from Milano Cortina, and that will start tomorrow morning on our show. Because of the time difference, we always get to watch the games a little bit out of one corner of our eye, and we get the updates. They happen at 6:25, 7:25, and at 8:25 a.m. while our show is on the air. So we look forward to that tomorrow. Of course, some of the action's already started and opening ceremonies are tomorrow night. Your news from Manitoba is coming up next.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg. At 6:30, it is a mild start to Thursday. -2 right now, and we are going to be melting, a high today of 2. Mix of sun and clouds this morning, but then clouds moving in by noon, and this evening, showers, and our temperature drops later tonight. So we'll hear all about that. A University of Winnipeg economist says he doesn't think a string of a large provincial deficit poses any danger to Wapkanu and his NDP government. Manitoba has posted year-end deficits of $2 billion and $1.2 billion since the NDP took power. The province is on track this year to be $1.6 billion in the red. Philip Serene says this likely doesn't bother the NDP base, which supports spending on healthcare.
Even if their deficits were in the $1 billion range, $1.5 billion, I'm not sure when the breaking point would be for the NDP's base, if there is one. And whether they would lose elections based on that, I'm not sure.
Premier Canoe has promised to balance Manitoba's books next year. High school students in the Hanover School Division no longer have internet on school-issued laptops overnight. The rule restricts online access between midnight and 6 in the morning to encourage better sleeping habits. Steinbach Regional Secondary School student Tyler Lewis says while lots of classmates complain about being tired, it's not necessarily because of their laptop use.
I feel like a lot of that is due to their own personal lives and not due to school-related things. Yeah. Like people are go out with friends or watching movies or whatever, but I feel like the school thing hasn't really been affected as much, and people have their own devices. Like if they're going to stay out, they're going to use something else.
The grade 11 student often studies or finishes homework in the evening when she has free time. These restrictions were put in place Monday to coincide with the first day of the new semester. The number of measles cases in Manitoba is swelling again as the province marks 1 year of its outbreak. Infections peaked in May before dropping in the fall. While some provinces have declared their outbreaks over, the disease is still circulating in Manitoba. 51 cases so far in the new year. Michelle Dreger is the professor of community health at the University of Manitoba.
There's still a challenge in Manitoba in addressing those growing number of cases, especially ensuring that people are accessing the vaccines that are available to them to help keep children and people safe.
Around 8 in every 10 measles cases are among unvaccinated patients. So far, 22 people in Manitoba have been hospitalized because of the virus. Dozens of support workers in Winnipeg are helping make the evacuation more comfortable for elders and young families from Pimicikamak. More than 100 people have returned to their Cree Nation, but thousands are still out of their homes following a power outage that led to frozen and damaged pipes. Jackie Anderson is the executive director at Gani Ganichik. Her group is working to help elders. Anderson says they get daily visits at their hotel rooms, and the agency collects donations of wild meat, fish, and hosts fish fries.
As much as we want to provide them, meals from the hotels, we are hearing from the elders just how the processed food or not eating food that maybe you and I take for granted because we have access to it, but it's making them sick.
Anderson says one worker taught some elders how to knit and crochet. They are also providing games, puzzles, and books. CBC News has learned at least 9 Toronto police officers are facing charges related to violent incidents involving the tow trucking industry. Police in the Toronto area have a news conference scheduled this morning where details are expected on that investigation. You can hear more coming up on World Report at 7. Winkler's mayor is calling for respect as his city has been chosen for an upcoming Pride March. Henry Siemens took to Facebook yesterday after receiving a lot of comments about the event run by a private organization. He says he and City Council don't support the beliefs or ideologies of every event happening in Winkler, but they support people's freedom to plan and host their own events. Siemens says it is his sincere prayer everyone finds a way to respect one another.
I believe that it is important, as I mentioned in my post, that people are able to speak freely. And if there are people who have a concern, they should be able to share it. If there are people who are supportive, they should also be able to share it.
Pembina Valley Pride announced this week it would bring its annual march and rally to Winkler for the first time in June. Well, scoring first didn't seem to help the Winnipeg Jets last night.
Goes! Connor puts it to the net. Power play goal. Jets strike first.
Kyle Connor in the first period there on Sportsnet, but that was it for Winnipeg as the Montreal Canadiens humbled the Jets 5-1. Head coach Scott Arniel.
Wow, what was it, a minute and 30 seconds? We gave up those 2 goals there. We talked about Montreal's D being in the rush and gave up the one. There was a couple there where we got on the wrong side of people and they got in their speed game, which they do well. We did a good job in the first of containing that. Second period, we allowed them to do that a few times, and like I said, a minute and 30 seconds. It's a 3-1 hockey game.
And it was the last hockey game before the Olympic break. The Jets are sending 4 players to the Olympics. Josh Morrissey playing for Canada, Kyle Connor and Connor Hellebuck will be on Team USA, and Nino Niederreiter for Switzerland. Arneal hopes this break will be a reset for his team. Winnipeg next plays January 25th in Vancouver. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
You probably misspoke there because you said Winnipeg next plays January 25th.
February.
Look.
That's where we are. This is February.
You'll know if you walk out the door.
I know.
Today's
it kind of
the
feels
day.
like, what, March, April?
It actually doesn't feel like February. You're right. It probably does feel more like March. This temperature above normal. Let's get into that right now with Abby, our regional forecast. This is the day we've been waiting for. It doesn't last. This is in southern Manitoba. We're not going to be above zero for days and days, but today it's wet out there.
Just that spring-like day for us for this part of the province. Mild conditions southern Manitoba with a mix of sun and clouds on its way, while we're looking at more like sharp temperature drop and gusty winds in the afternoon for the northern region. For Winnipeg and the Red River Valley region at this time, we're looking at, let's just say, -10 towards Steinberg. And then if you go towards Melita, you're going to see like 1 degree there. Dauphin is around 2 degrees at this time. But for Winnipeg, the sweet spot, I'd say, is -4 because the airport says -6. The fort says -2. It's clear outside. Temperature is going to stay steady around that -4 range all morning before we see a high of 2 degrees by lunch break, and then expecting a mix of sun and clouds with light winds coming from the northwest. For the Pembina Valley region, around Morden, Winkler out to the Morris towards the U.S. border, it's mild also there. 1 degree, clear morning. You're aiming for a high of 4 degrees later today. Brandon towards Nipawin, we're seeing -4 there. Clear start. Clouds will move in. We're seeing a high around 3 degrees for the Westman region today. In the Parkland region, around Dauphin, as mentioned earlier, cloudy conditions right now. We're looking at 2 degrees there. You'll warm up to 4 later in the day. Expect some breezy conditions by the afternoon period. In the Interlake region, Gimli and surrounding areas, we're seeing -3 there. Partly cloudy skies in some areas. Just a few clouds in the close to the Winnipeg beach. You're going to reach a high of 2 degrees today. With the wind chill coming your way, it's going to feel like -27 overnight. Now we track conditions into the northern part of the province where we're seeing temperatures between 1 degree and -20 at this time. Looking at the path sitting around 0, some areas around Flin Flon, we're seeing 1 degree there. Light snow falling. Temperature is going to fall to -11 this afternoon, and then the wind chill just about close to -20. Thompson, we're seeing light snow there, -10 at this time. You get to -19 later. Watch out for frost bites because the wind chill is going to feel like -30. And for Tuduli Lake, we're going to see temperatures plunge to about -27 by the afternoon period, and then the wind chill close to -40. For Churchill, -19, light snow, blowing snow this afternoon. Temperature falls to -24. The wind chill also close to -40 for that part of the province. So overall, it's more like a split. We have like a spring-like condition in the south, and then up north, it's kind of cold. Winnipeg right now, sweet spots, -4.
You can see that already. People have their hoods down when they're walking down Portage-Ave here. Haven't seen that in a while. Let's get into the morning commute. Sierra Sanders is in with a quick update.
Good morning. Pretty quiet on the commuter line so far in this first hour of the show as folks start their mornings and wake up with us here on CBC Radio. Looking at the highways, though, Highway 1 is being reported by Manitoba 511 as partly covered. So if you are on the 1 this morning, be aware of that and adjust your driving to the conditions. So Manitoba 511 is reporting Highway 1 as partly covered. So you want to be careful with that if you are heading out that way this morning. As well as you look north of Winnipeg, northeast of Winnipeg, many highways being reported as partly covered. So you want to be aware of that if you are heading out on the highways, as well if you are going down south towards the U.S.-Canada border. We are seeing partly covered highways there. But if you're in the area of Wawaniisa, Glenborough, Killarney, Pilot Mound, Crystal City, Boissevain, you are seeing highways covered as well. So if you're out west in that area, be aware of that and make sure to check Manitoba 511 if you are heading out on the highways today for up-to-date information on conditions and any situations that pop up there on the highways. And speaking of hockey, as Heather was just talking about, as some Winnipeg Jets members get ready to head to the Olympics for hockey, I want to mention that the women's team actually kicks off it gets in action today against Finland today at 2:10 Central Time here. So they start today, actually. Their preliminary round against Finland starts today. So you could tune in. We got Katie Tabin. We have Jocelyn LaRock, 2 Manitobans on the team. So worth watching for the Manitoba connection there. So 2:10 today, Team Canada, the women's hockey team, takes on Finland.
All right, good note there, because a lot of us are thinking about opening ceremonies tomorrow.
Exactly.
Action starting today. All right, thanks, Sierra.
Thank you.
It's time for business news. Phil DeMont is in for Christley Ramlakan today with their report. Good morning.
Morning, Marcy.
So we've already been having, through a Manitoba lens, talking about this, but Ottawa scrapping the mandate around electric vehicles. Overall, Phil, in this country, what will it mean, do you think, for the auto sector?
Well, it's considered a win, but it also creates, in my mind anyway, some uncertainty. Reports have the Carney government dropping the current policy of mandating a certain percentage of new car sales being electric vehicles. The goal, 60% of EVs, of new sales being EVs by 2030. Car makers up here have long argued it's unrealistic. Consumer demand isn't there, so the cars and trucks will just be in the back lot. And the charging infrastructure for most of these kind of vehicles just isn't available in the numbers you need it to be. Bit of a chicken and egg problem, but you can kind of see their point, especially they say, look, we're facing Donald Trump's tariffs and all kinds of uncertainty, so you got to, in effect, throw us a bone at some point. Instead, it appears that Ottawa will go back to the old tailpipe emission regulations. That's when each car model more or less gets a pollution number, rather than a company or the industry gets a set goal for the sale of electric cars and trucks. The question then becomes, won't this slow the goal of getting more Canadians to buy EVs? And that's probably true in the broader sense. So to get after these concerns, the Carney government looks like it's going to bring in a tax credit. You buy an electric car or truck, you get $5,000 back, that kind of range. But there's still a problem with the change, and it's a longer-term one. J.D. Power predicts that EVs will make up 43% of new car sales worldwide by 2030. So he's talking 4 years. North America lags behind in the adoption of these kind of vehicles. So I found a number for the U.S. Of all the cars and trucks on the road now, so all of them, only 2% are EVs in the United States. In China, it's 10%, and that we know that number's increasing. So you might need the help now to reduce these mandates to make the industry more viable, in 2026. But reducing the incentives in the longer term would presumably delay getting more EVs on the road in Canada and the U.S., and that would give China's lead, which is now substantial, it would grow even bigger.
Let's go to another story here. A lot of restaurant chains, we've been reporting this in Canada, but also in the United States, are closing stores. Why is it happening?
Yeah, it's piling up. Pizza Hut this week, 250 stores are closing. Noodles & Company, it's an American chain, 35. Wendy's, as many as 350 stores this year. Same in Canada. Predictions are 3,000 stores will close up here in 2026. 7,000 closed last year. The experts say, look, the industry probably hit a plateau. Right now at dinner, there's a 50% chance you're eating in a restaurant. But that percentage is unlikely to grow. Once you're, 50, that's about the highest you're going to get. So then you've got price increases over the past 2 years. The cost of food at the diner has increased faster than the food in the grocery store. So what happens? People buy more groceries and eat at home. One survey has over the next 3 months, Americans will cut their restaurant spending by more than 20% versus last year up here. In 2026, Canadians are expected to spend only 2% more going out to restaurants. That's versus 7% for the first 9 months of 2025. Those kind of numbers, if they come true, you can kind of expect to read about more change, cutting more stores this year.
And we're just talking about the games starting, the Olympics tomorrow officially. And when the medals are handed out, of course, gold, silver, bronze. We've been doing all these stories about the price of gold, though. Does it mean medals are actually worth more?
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. You're right. The medals are actually made from gold, silver, and in the case of bronze, actually copper. And all three metals, the price for them has jumped in recent years. Consequently, athletes can pull in some coin if they sell off the decorations. Take a gold. Back in 2024, you'd make about $2,500 US if you melted it down and sold the gold. Your take now is about $5,000. Silver, bigger increase but smaller sticker price. Back in the Paris Olympics in 24. Your second place ribbon was worth about $22. Now it's worth about $85. Bronze medal, it's price of copper up 50%. a pound for the last 2 years, but each bronze contains less than a pound of copper. So basically, if you melt that thing down, you're making $6, not enough for a hamburger. And at those prices, it really tells you want to go for the gold.
Or just keep your metal. Yeah.
Yeah, you can hold on to it too.
All right, Phil, thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
That is Phil DeMont filling in for Christley Ramlakan today with business news here on CBC. You know those January days where it was freezing and gray and it felt like everybody was edgy and cranky? I think today is going to be the antidote to that. Today is going to be like, oh, it's February 5th. It's melting. It's warm. I have my gloves off and I'm not dying out here. So I think it's going to be a pretty good day across the south, that is. We do have some cold weather into the north. But today in the south, we're getting to 3 degrees in Winnipeg. 2 in Winnipeg, 3 degrees in Brandon. It's going to be really mild and very, very nice. Well, Phil was just talking about how people are trying to manage their money, and he was talking about it in the context of restaurants closing and such. But Canadians overall are feeling less confident about their financial situations. The insecurity is, in fact, leading some individuals to feel helpless when it comes to planning for their futures. This morning, personal finance columnist Rubina Ahmed Haq has more on the state of financial wellness in Canada.
A new survey finds that nearly half of us feel that no matter what we do, we won't be able to achieve our financial goals and get ahead. That's according to a poll conducted by RBC.
I think a lot of Canadians are stressed about their finances right now.
Dawn Tam is Senior Manager and Regional Financial Planning Consultant at RBC. She says this survey shows there's a growing divide between those who feel financially secure and those who don't.
The most important insight I took away from this data is that while nearly half, or 49% of the adults surveyed, felt resilient, optimistic, hopeful, or unconcerned about their personal finances, almost as many, 47%, feel exhausted, apprehensive, anxious, or frustrated. This contrast reflects that the ongoing impact of financial pressures and uncertainty haven't been the same for everyone.
She says more needs to be done so those less confident don't get left behind. Without financial confidence, it's hard to plan for the future, make realistic financial decisions, and that can lead to increased stress and anxiety. And no one age group is immune to this.
I think the younger people are stressed because they have their whole lives in front of them. They're trying to get settled. They're trying to have some stability in where they're going to live. And so that can be very stressful in the environment that we're in right now. On the other side, we have maybe some older Canadians that are looking at retiring, and they're wondering whether or not the nest egg that they've built for themselves to sustain themselves through retirement is going to be enough because of the inflationary environment that we're in.
Financial stability is top of mind for Canadians.
Carissa Lucreziano is Vice President, Financial Planning and Advice at CIBC. She's focused on building financial confidence with her clients because she knows this can lead to better overall financial outcomes.
In today's market, with so much, there's economic uncertainty, geopolitical turbulence, we're noticing that Canadians are becoming more intentional and more resilient with money management. And there's a real shift happening. 46% are prioritizing reviewing their financial progress regularly, and that's up 6% year over year. People are also setting new goals, new financial goals.
She says this resilience happens when you start to feel better about your money. The financial planner says it starts with better money management. Whether you're working with a professional or managing your money on your own, you need to know where it's going.
Because it's awareness. You'll be able to be more clear in knowing what your current financial situation to make those decisions in where, to cut back if there's an opportunity. And even from an awareness perspective to say, hey, I didn't know, for example, I had another maybe $100 or $200 a month. How can I utilize that?
She says focus on what you can control. Good spending habits, consistent savings, and making wise investment decisions are always good for your finances. Not listening to the day-to-day noise of the markets and the news headlines, as these are often short-term situations. Focus on your long-term plans, your retirement, saving for a house, and helping your kids afford post-secondary education. These are all important important for our financial health. Financial confidence starts with becoming more financially literate, understanding where you are invested, building a budget to know where your money is going and what income you're bringing in. These are all good financial habits that build confidence. As we start a new year, both experts say this is the perfect time to set some 2026 goals, to pay down debt, to save more, to earn more. These small steps can have a big impact on your finances and your overall financial confidence. For CBC Radio, I'm Rubina Ahmed Haq.
You're listening to 89.3 FM this morning, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining us and being here. I'm Marcy Marcusa. We were just chatting actually about the hockey game today between Finland and Team Canada at the Olympic Games. But there's now more details about something you may have heard from developing yesterday kind of overnight as well. And just confirmed really now by CBC that game's actually postponed. And that is going to be because some of the players on Finland have come down with norovirus, which is very concerning. But that game will be postponed. So we'll have to see when Team Canada women's team is going to have their first game in Milano Cortina. Right now, tomorrow, Canada officially opens its consulate in Nuuk, Greenland. Foreign Affairs Minister Anina Anand will be there, as will Governor General Mary Simon. The Governor General has been in Norway and Denmark since Monday, in fact, attending a conference on Arctic affairs. It all adds up to Canada's policy of strengthening its soft power and security in the Arctic. To talk about this, Jean-François Bélanger is with us, an assistant professor of military operations at Royal Danish Defence College, and he is in Brussels this morning. Good morning. Hi.
Good morning.
So we know few specifics of the Gigi's visit to the Arctic, but tell us more about the issues that are central as she is there in Norway and Denmark.
Well, I think from where I'm sitting, right, like as a security and expert, I think there's three main issues that are going to be discussed. I mean, among other things, the first is it's impossible to not talk about the most recent Greenland crisis, right, with the Americans and this framework of a deal that was discussed at the end of Davos. Second, I think for Canada, we're most likely going to bring on the table the importance of a good relationship with Greenland and Denmark when it's come to the Arctic defense of North America. And within this, we're most likely going to talk about the issues that climate change will bring and how to mitigate them, the threat of Russia, the concern with China, and so on. And I think first, like encompassing all of this is going to be a reaffirmation of Canada's commitment to the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Greenland and of the Arctic nation. And the meeting itself was more likely discuss the continuation of the Prime Minister's speech at Davos, talking about the necessity of more collaboration and cooperation between smaller nations given the current international climate.
When you think about the opening of Canada's consulate in Greenland, what is the actual significance of it?
So for Canada, it's a continuation of a policy that was put in place in November or December 2024 as part of our Arctic foreign policy. We put forward that we wanted to open a consulate in Nuuk. So it's good news that we follow through with the whole affair. I think it showcased our interest in having more engagement when it comes to the Arctic with the other Arctic nation minus Russia, and reaffirm the importance of the North Forest. But I think given the timing, it's difficult not to see it as at the same time as Canada's support of Denmark and Greenland in the current dispute and negotiation, and showcasing, and we talk often about soft power, but showcasing that Canada is a steadfast ally when it comes to the current situation.
And talk about the positioning of Mary Simon on that front, if you would, in terms of, she obviously has deep connections in the region. She's a Nook. She was an ambassador to Denmark, right?
Yes. And so two things for me comes to mind very rapidly. First is that we're sending somebody that understands the issue, understand the area, and understand more broadly how Denmark and the kingdom operates, right? And the positioning of Greenland as a semi-autonomous nation within that. And more importantly, I think it's difficult not to see a show of respect by Canada by sending somebody that has connections like this.
What else do you think the Canadians should understand about Canada's developing policy in the Arctic?
A few things. So I think, I'll start with this. I think what Canadian needs to understand and become a lot more engaged with is that we will see increased defense spending in the coming years, right? And it's something that, especially when it comes to the Arctic, it's something that historically Canadians have not been very happy with, right? But and it makes sense because Canada is, in a sense, a very lucky nation. We're surrounded by 3 oceans, one of which is frozen, which is very difficult security-wise to get to. And then we had a steadfast ally to the south. Now, this is changing. We have a need for a more independent policy. We have a need for policies that are less bilateral in nature, which is what we used to do with the Americans, with NORAD and so on. And Canada's pivoting towards a more multilateral stance, more integration with other, more cooperation, not integration, with other Arctic nations, but also with NATO and so on. But this will cost money. We're already seeing it, like the hardware that we're investing in, the jet fighters and so on, but also the $1 billion for infrastructure in the Arctic over 4 years that was in the budget. And it may come with trade-off of money not being available elsewhere.
Good points all around, Jean-Francois. Thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, anytime.
That's Jean-Francois Bélanger, an assistant professor of military operations at the Royal Danish Defence College in Copenhagen, talking about what we are going to see tomorrow, what is opening there, the consulate for Canada in Greenland. Governor General Mary Simon has been there all week. In our next hour of Information Radio, when is the last time, if you really think about this, you had a respectful conversation with someone who has a completely different perspective than you do on a polarizing subject? Maybe even someone who, on paper, if they wrote down their opinion, you might look at it or read it online or on socials, and you might immediately be offended in some way or say, oh, well, I have zero common ground with this person. But when's the last time you had a respectful conversation with someone who had that different perspective? Stay tuned to hear about an initiative. It's called Manitoba Talks. It will be the first of its kind in Canada. CBC Manitoba, a part of facilitating this, and we'll tell you all about it when one of our exec producers is in the next hour, so stay tuned for that. Also in the next hour, we're going to take you to the rural municipality of St. Andrews, just north of Winnipeg. They're launching a fund to support women and girls in sport. They're trying to prioritize sport at the same level for girls as they do boys, which they say can be a challenge. So stay tuned and we'll find out more about that initiative. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells, who is here with Developing Stories Otherwise with headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, high school students in Hanover School Division no longer have internet overnight on school-issued laptops. Online access is restricted between midnight and 6 in the morning. The assistant superintendent there says the division felt it was right to set overnight boundaries, and the move also meant to improve students' sleeping habits. The number of measles cases in Manitoba is swelling again as the province marks 1 year of its outbreak. Infections peaked in May and then dropped a little in the fall. However, the disease is still circulating in this province. We're going to hear more about that as well in our next local news coming up at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Colder to the north, but to the south here, wow. -2 right now in Clear in Winnipeg. Our high is 2 degrees. Winds northwest at 20. It's going to be warm. Tonight, few rain showers. It'll change to flurries, and then it gets a bit colder tomorrow again. So enjoy the wet stuff today and make sure you got a lot of windshield washer fluid. 788-3093 if you have any issues on the highways. Of course, it's winter. You're going to have some areas partly snow-covered out there, but you can check 511 before you head out to check your region. If you have a story about a horse, ever been on a horse? Ever learned to ride a horse? We want to hear it. We'll tell you why in the next hour.
On The Current.
I love being single and I love living alone. It's great, it's fantastic, but it's expensive.
It's called the singles tax. All the things like paying rent, utilities, and food for just one person that make life more expensive. And it means Canadians who aren't part of a couple are falling behind financially. We'll talk about what it's like to pay the singles tax coming up on The Current.
The Current with Matt Galloway. This morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland. And on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Marcia Young. Police in the Toronto area are expected to hold a news conference this morning. They will be giving more information on a criminal investigation involving the tow truck industry. Sources tell CBC News multiple police officers are among those arrested. Our John Northcott joins me in studio with more on what we know so far. John.
Marcia, we are yet to get official word on all of this, but sources tell CBC News some 9 Toronto police officers are amongst dozens of people arrested and charged in relation to the region's often violent towing industry. Those sources tell CBC the charges against the officers are in relation to leaking addresses to hitmen, as well as leaking police officers' home addresses. The investigation, we are told, also uncovered a conspiracy to kill a senior official at a maximum security detention centre in Toronto. For years now, the towing industry that operates along Highway 401 and other major highways in the GTA has seen murders, trucks burned, and shootings, including the intimidation of members of the public as part of a fight for territory in the lucrative industry. The Toronto Police Services Board held a behind-closed-doors emergency meeting yesterday and have not released what they discussed. The police union said it is aware of several of its members who were arrested and that they will, quote, ensure our members receive due process. There's a news conference scheduled for 10 a.m. Eastern today. We're expecting to hear from the York Regional Police, who led the investigation, with the Toronto Chief of Police in attendance to outline the charges. All that police are saying on the record at this point is that they will address, quote, a lengthy investigation into organized crime and corruption.
John, so many officers arrested. How unusual is this?
Marcia, it's very unusual. For police to charge their own, traditionally they have to have a tremendous amount of evidence. We've seen people charged with multiple offenses before related to violence in the towing industry, but this many people arrested and as many as 9 police officers charged with offenses related to releasing home addresses, potentially those of fellow officers, actions that could endanger those officers' lives, is truly unprecedented and something that observers describe as very disturbing.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, Marcia.
My World Report co-host John Northcott in studio. Prime Minister Mark Carney is expected to unveil his government's national automotive strategy today. The highly anticipated announcement is likely to affect several Trudeau-era policies, including ones on electric vehicles. Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau. And Janice, why did the government have to rethink its approach?
Marcia, a strategy doesn't work if it isn't incentivizing the right things. The previous EV mandate was focused on climate goals, but then the threat of losing Canada's industry altogether emerged, and companies that have invested in Canadian automotive production facilities warned they were on track to lose up to $3 billion if the federal government stuck with a scheme that rewarded companies to import EVs. Brian Kingston from the Vehicle Manufacturers Association.
The way the mandate worked, 95% of existing production here in Canada today was going to be made illegal for sale in 9 years. That's not a good message to send to auto companies that are thinking about how do they keep their footprint in this country.
Sources say this new strategy is going to put the focus back on emissions targets, a system of standards and credits to reward companies to improve fuel efficiency, as well as produce more hybrids and fully electric vehicles. This change is intended to stop undermining the competitiveness of existing Canadian facilities. Flavio Volpe from the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association.
At a moment when the White House is attacking the Canadian automotive businesses' right to exist, that we set up systems that make those investments by Toyota in Woodstock, by Ford in Oakville stronger, not weaker.
So those are some of the incentives for manufacturers. What about consumers?
The previous federal program that offset the cost of a new electric vehicle by $5,000 ran out of money. It was so heavily subscribed. It wasn't renewed in last fall's budget, but Radio-Canada has learned the $5,000 rebates are coming back. We need to watch to see today if these rebates boost brands that build those EVs at Canadian facilities instead of just importing.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Former Prime Minister Stephen Harper says Canada must urgently protect itself from the United States. Harper is marking the 20th anniversary of his Conservative government. Party supporters gathered for a gala in Ottawa. Harper warned them the Trump administration is becoming increasingly hostile, and it is openly questioning Canadian sovereignty. He says Canada must adjust to new geopolitical realities.
To be clear, these realities mean that we must reduce our dependence on the U.S. in order to protect our sovereignty and our economy. But we must do so also clearly understanding that by all the critical measures of international relations, America will still remain our principal partner in the world. Thus, our future path requires balance and sober reflection.
Harper says the top priorities include defending Canada's manufacturing capacity and maintaining access to global markets for critical resources. Delegates from Iran and the U.S. will hold talks tomorrow over Tehran's nuclear program. Tension between the two countries remains high after Iran's use of deadly force on protesters last month. CBC senior correspondent Margaret Evans is in Iraq, and she close to the border with Iran. She has this story.
As things stand now, the much-anticipated meeting between Iran and the United States is set to take place in Oman on Friday, with Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt mediating. Little surprise that the scope of the negotiations is already in dispute, with the Americans insisting they include not just Iran's nuclear program, but its ballistic missiles, its funding of regional proxies, and its behavior towards its citizens. Iran wants to limit talks to the nuclear file. But analyst Alawar Al-Aladin of the Middle East Research Institute in neighboring northern Iraq says Iran is in a vulnerable position in the wake of its brutal crackdown on anti-government protesters.
They need to reduce the threat of regime change, and they have lost a lot of deterrent in the competition with Israel and the West.
U.S. President Donald Trump is keeping the pressure up, both in the military buildup he's ordered in the region and in an interview with NBC yesterday, where he said Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, should be very worried. Iran continues to severely limit internet services in the country. This man sent a voice message from inside Iran saying he's not optimistic about the talks or Iran's future.
The terms that both sides are suggesting goes against one another's nature.
He's asked that his identity be withheld for his own safety.
We're just waiting day and night for the first rockets to land.
The whole country, he says, is in a state of suspense. Margaret Evans, CBC News, Northern Iraq.
The Women's Olympic hockey game between Team Canada and Team Finland scheduled for today has been postponed. Olympic organizers say the decision was made after cases of norovirus were identified within the Finnish team following consultations with medical officials. The game will now be played on February 12th. Officials say the move was made to protect the health and safety of players and staff. We're getting new information this morning about the condition of one of Canada's Olympic athletes. Snowboarder Mark McMorris crashed during big air training last night at Milano Cortina and has taken off. He was taken off the course on a stretcher. Sarah Levitt has the update.
It's game time decision for Mark McMorris tonight at the Big Air qualifiers. We're learning more about what happened to him at a practice last night. Sounds like he landed the jump but caught an edge on his snowboard that brought him down hard. Brendan Matthews is with Canada Snowboard.
As a precaution in our sport, it's pretty standard protocol to be assisted off the hill just to make sure that they're doing everything by the book.
Big Air is high risk, high reward. The snowboarders are on a structure 50 meters high and take off a ramp doing tricks while also trying to get as much air and distance as possible. The Canadian Olympic Committee says McMorris went to hospital last night and did a round of tests before being released. We're told this morning he's feeling pretty good, but we don't know yet if he'll compete in the qualification round tonight. A decision will be made by 4 p.m. local time. This is McMorris's fourth Olympic appearance. He has 3 bronze medals from the previous games, and he's coming off a great season, taking home slope-style gold at X Games just a week and a half ago. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Livigno, Italy.
You can read more about Mark McMorris at cbcsports.ca, where you'll also find some Olympic coverage. That is World Report. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio on CBC on a very mild Thursday morning. The question is, this hour, if you're a student, how late were you up strolling last night?
We looked at whether or not they were scrolling on their devices before they went to bed and what was the likelihood that they would miss school because of being fatigued, and it was twice the rate for those that were on their devices before they went to bed.
We're going to hear from that expert about the impacts of late night screen time on kids. This out of the news that one Manitoba school division found students were surfing into the wee hours on borrowed laptops, and so now they're saying none of that between midnight and 6. So stay tuned. We'll get into the story. Also this hour on the show, in a moment, we're going to hear about CBC Manitoba getting on board to get you sitting across from someone with a very different point of view. Find out more about a special project called Manitoba Talks. It is a first time of its in Canada initiative, and CBC Manitoba leading this. It does beg you to think about when's the last time you had a respectful conversation with someone who has a completely different perspective on a polarizing subject. Stay tuned. We'll talk about the value of that, and we'll talk about Manitoba Talks. Right now, Heather Wells is in with other developing stories. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, as Manitoba's Premier talks up the economic benefit of a Port of Churchill expansion, a Winnipeg economist warns it's going to take time for tax revenue to flow into provincial coffers if the mega project goes ahead. We'll hear about that. And dozens of support workers in Winnipeg are helping make the evacuation more comfortable for elders and young families from Pimicikamak Cree Nation. More than 100 have returned, but thousands are still out of their homes. And Ganichik is working to help elders. We'll hear how coming up in our next local news at 7:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Abby.
Yeah, a mild start across the southern part of the province, but we're looking at sharp cold fronts already pushing into the northern regions this morning with temperatures falling, and we're going to be seeing biting wind chills. For Winnipeg right now, we are around -4. Cloudy outside at this time. We're heading to a mild afternoon high of 2 degrees before temperatures will drop further tonight across the southern regions. Brandon, Dauphin, Gimli, mild start, -2s at this time. We're going to see highs around 3 and 4 degrees with a mix of sun and clouds. But up north, the Power and Flin Flon near 0 at this time with light snow. It's going to drop to -11 by the afternoon. Piriwat, Thompson and Churchill between -11 and -19, facing that dangerous wind chill close to -29 and close to -30 in some areas later in the day with light snow. But for Winnipeg right now, we are around -4. We're expecting some freezing rain later tonight.
All right, Sierra, what's the commute like?
Not pretty quiet on the commuter line this morning, Marcy. Not too many calls so far, but usually I eat my words, and then here in like 10 minutes it'll get super busy. But so far, nothing to report any major accidents or any situations going on here in the city. But again, looking at the highways, Manitoba 511 still reporting that Highway 1 just past Headingley is being reported as partially covered. So you want to be aware of that if you are taking the 1 this morning, as well as seeing covered highways in the Wawanesa, Souris, Deloraine, Boissevain, Killarney area. So we want to be aware of those covered highways there, as well as you head south towards the American-Canadian border. We are seeing covered and partially covered highways. And then if you're looking northeast of Winnipeg, a lot of highways are being reported as partially covered as well. So keep that in mind if you are heading out on the highways today, and make sure to check Manitoba 511 for up-to-date conditions and any situations going on out there. But if something is getting in your way right now, whether you are here in the city or wherever you are in the province, I'd love to hear about it. Give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Well, we live in a highly polarized world, and it seems that it's becoming even more so. Social media doesn't help us, frankly. It traps us in echo chambers, and CBC Manitoba is launching a project to try and help break us out of those echo chambers and have conversations with people that, well, maybe we don't agree with. Conversations like this one.
You have to justify yourself every day as with the choice that you made. But you also had to, when you were before your transition, you also had to justify yourself. So how is that different? Like, you did not go from one place to a better place because you're still justifying, you're still trying to prove you. So how does that make sense to you?
Wow, those are deep. Love it. No, this is great. I'm into this. From what I got from what, like you said, like I don't feel like being trans is like, it's not a choice that I made. It's just who I am. It's hard to kind of explain, but like, yeah, like it's not something that I chose to be. I don't choose to like deal with the like violence and just the slews of transphobia that I get. And I feel like that's where we're kind of similar, where you like, we both have experienced that, and I think that's some kind of common ground where it's like, I'm not choosing, like, you didn't choose your faith. That's just who you are. I didn't choose to be trans. This is just who I am. Yeah, I hope that answered your question. Like, that's
I mean, I feel you traded one set of identity crises to another.
So if you feel like a fly on the wall, that's okay. We're listening in on a conversation between two Manitobans there. Bertram Schneider is CBC Manitoba's executive producer of programming. He's actually here to tell us about who that was and also about what this project's all about. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So what was that conversation we were just listening to?
That was a conversation that was actually agreed upon by two of our members of our community advisory board. Kai, who you heard there, a trans, non-binary Winnipegger. Tasneem, who's a woman of faith, Muslim. They're two Winnipeggers who wouldn't usually be talking together. They're two Winnipeggers who would find themselves usually on the opposite side of a lot of the big contentious issues that are going on in our community. Stories that we've done around parental rights, marriage, trans rights. But they've gotten to know each other through the Community Advisory Board. And they've developed a trust. And they said, you know what, this Manitoba Talks thing, which I'm going to tell you about in a second, we want to help make people understand what it is. And what it is conversations like this one. Conversations where people who have very different backgrounds, beliefs, political beliefs, can sit down and actually have an honest conversation with each other, where they seek empathy, where they seek understanding. And it's not a battling tops, it's not a coming head to head on something. It's actually seeking understanding and seeking humanity, and not necessarily changing the other's opinion, but coming to a better understanding of each other. And that's kind of what Manitoba Talks is all about.
Now, Manitoba Talks is based on an idea that came from somewhere else. So what's the history of it? Where does this come from?
Let me give you the backstory on that one. So it started in Germany in 2017. One of the media there, Die Zeit Online, it's one of the big local daily papers. They were recognizing in Germany that society was becoming highly polarized. For lack of a better description, people on the right and people on the left were getting further and further apart and not talking to each other. And it was taking all sorts of, it was happening in the media, it was happening between people. Social media itself was a cesspool, which it tends to be. And they thought, what if we have a project where we bring citizens together? What if we have a project where we actually get Germans to talk to each other and seek understanding? And so they came up with what is the model for this thing now, which is growing a lot. But the model they came up with is, let's come up with an online survey and find out people's political views on various contentious issues. And then we're going to match up people who have as opposite a point of view as is possible and see how those conversations goes. And it was pretty interesting how it worked.
Now, what's interesting here is, so the survey is developed through the Media Corporation in Germany and here, CBC Manitoba. The questions will be to sort of identify people, I guess, for their views on topics. But then what kinds of questions will be used on the survey? Can you give us sort of some examples of how that would work?
We talked to our whole newsroom about this, and we said, let's think, what are the sort of most polarizing questions
Those
in
are the
Manitoba
sessions we were in
now?
recently.
Yeah, we did that. And it's funny because if you think about it, like all of our reporters and producers who are out there in the community every day, they know what the hot button issues are. And it's funny, even you and I, Marcy, in our brief careers here in 15, 20 years, how much it's changed, whether we can get people to talk on the radio to each other.
A lot.
Yeah. 15 years ago, you get two people with a very different set of views, and they would go, and it could be a very civilized, very thoughtful conversation. And now there is a reticence to do that.
Now it happens sometimes around elections because
Yep.
people put questions to politicians around different
Yep.
issues with different viewpoints, but around daily issues that might speak to, well, you name it.
People have lost
a different value, a religion, like whatever it is. They just, sometimes people don't even want to sit down together.
They've lost the appetite for it, the skills to have it, all of those things, right? And so, we sat down in our newsroom and we said, so what are the things that are highly polarizing? And so, yes, we have questions around, is Canada accepting too many immigrants or not? Questions around First Nations and rights around having pipelines on traditional lands. Did the government go too far during COVID? Big dividing topic, obviously, right? So we've come up with these lists of questions. Same as they did in Germany. It's always, in any of these examples, it is customized. And just to say, it's actually kind of cool because this is the very first time in Canada this project's come. This has been done by over 100 different countries have participated, and over 200,000 conversations have happened over the years doing this thing. First time in Canada, we're doing it here in Manitoba, which is neat. So anyway, we came up with these questions, and there's 8 of them, and that is how we, again, gather that data. And what happens is you fill out the form, you get entered, you get asked, do you want to participate in conversations with somebody with the opposite opinion from you? You say yes or no. But if you say yes, you then get fed into this sorting software that this German media company has created. And they pair you up with somebody who is very, very different in opinions than you are.
What's interesting is normally as journalists, we would do this and the end goal would always be programming. This is really about creating a Manitoba that talks to each other more and understands how to sit down again if we've lost that skill, as you said. And we're almost facilitators, and like we started with, fly on the wall to get people together that might be willing to participate, right?
Yeah, most of these conversations that happen are going to be entirely private between the two people. They can happen in person, and we hope a lot of them do. They can happen online. It's a big province. We want people to be able to speak to each other from Winnipeg to Virden, from Emerson to Churchill. Like, people need to be able to talk to each other. So some of these will be online conversations. When they're in person, they're take place in a public place, in a cafe or whatever, that kind of thing. And it's interesting because when the German media company, when Die Zeit first did this years ago, they thought they were going to have a lot of fireworks. They thought it was going to be these really battling tops kind of conversations where people would be arguing and fighting with each other. And it wasn't. It was thoughtful, empathetic, listening conversations. That's what people were craving. And we see what happens if you don't have these conversations, because what's going on in the US right now is kind of horrible. And arguably, we are not that far behind in some respects on some of those issues in Manitoba. So I think there's a craving for these conversations, and we'll see what comes of them.
How can people take part if they're listening this morning and they're thinking, I might be one of the people that wants to step into a conversation like this?
You'll certainly find it online. There'll be an information page on our community site on our website. You will be seeing some ads around, and there'll be some QR codes that you can scan and participate in the survey that way, for sure. A lot of our online stories are going to have questions embedded in them. So if there's a question around artificial intelligence, let's say, one of our questions is about that. Is AI going to make us dumber? Is the question. You'll see that in the middle of a web story. If you answer that yes or no, it'll then prompt you to answer a few more questions and get you to sign up for the thing, which is neat. So people can participate. Individuals can participate. It's also an opportunity, I think, for you to invite people, for listeners to invite friends and relatives, people who they maybe are struggling having conversations with. Like, it's an interesting thing, right? If there's that person you haven't talked to since COVID because you just went in opposite directions, send them this link to this thing. Participate in this conversation. Like, you're not going to talk to each other, but you'll be having these conversations. It's a good way to, broach that territory.
Manitoba Talks. Thank you for telling us about it.
Thank you.
Bertram Schneider is CBC Manitoba's executive producer of programming. He was in studio with us to share more about Manitoba Talks. It does launch today. And so if you want to check it out and find out more details, and if you're thinking about taking part, cbc.ca/MB Talks and cbc.ca/MB Talks once again. Well, we're going to talk about sports in a moment, but still sports related. We have a story coming up. Have a listen.
It's time for us to take joy and be involved in the excitement, whether you're directly involved or not involved.
So we're going to hear more about what that joy, being involved or directly involved, is about when we hear about a new fund that is looking to support specifically women and girls in sport in St. Andrews, which is, of course, a rural municipality comprised of a whole bunch of different towns, villages, and communities just north of Winnipeg. So we'll have that conversation coming up. Why did they set up this fund and where the fund's going to go to support? So that's at 7:40 this morning. Right now, though, it is 7:25 a.m. on a very mild Thursday. It is February the 5th, and we're going to get into sports with Paul McGowan now, who's been standing by. Hey there, Paul.
Hey, Marcy.
So we've already been talking a little bit about the Jets this morning because we have to, because they're local, they're our team. But this was sad. This game was not the way they wanted to go into the Olympic break.
No, a 5-1 loss to the Canadiens, and on home ice to boot. Kyle Connor actually opened the scoring in this one, and then Montreal scores 5 unanswered goals, and it means that entering the break, the Jets sit 11 points out of a wild card spot, and with 4 teams that they would need to leapfrog to get there. Scott Arniel, though, endlessly optimistic, not ready to throw in the towel.
When we get back, it's going to be a lot of work in front of us. So really just told the guys after the game there, just, you know what, obviously they got to look after themselves, but it's just getting prepared. When we come back, it'll be a little bit of a mini training camp. And then we start out on the road, and what we see a lot of the teams that, they're above us in the standings, especially early on, the first 2 weeks. So that's the time for us to make hay. We got to win hockey games.
If they can make up 11 points, it would be something else coming off that Olympic break. Some other hockey news, Marcy. You may have seen this already, that potential first overall NHL draft pick Gavin McKenna has been charged with aggravated assault in Pennsylvania, stemming from an incident on Saturday evening. So we're keeping an eye on that. Also, if you are a Canadian hockey fan and you were looking forward to watching the Canadian women get going today at the Olympics, their game against Finland has been postponed. Multiple members of the Finnish team have norovirus, and so the IOC releasing a statement just in the last little bit saying that game will be rescheduled and be played at a later date in the tournament.
All right, let's go to basketball. Raptors let one slip away last night when they were in Minnesota.
Yeah, the Raps had a 10-point fourth quarter lead last night against a very good Minnesota team. But for the third time in 4 games this week, they lose the handle on a very winnable game. The Raptors lose by 2 in the end, 128-126. And part of this, Marcy, is just growing pains. The Raptors are a young, relatively inexperienced team. They're not used to closing out games. But to that end, the NBA trade deadline is today, and there has been no end of speculation about the Raptors making themselves better, potentially adding a center. More on that in a second, because Darko Rajakovic spoke before the deadline and said that he isn't trying to predict what might happen.
I don't have information what's going on. I don't want to know what's going on until something, goes down or doesn't go down. And I just wanted to acknowledge with players that I understand where we might be as a team and that might be on somebody's mind. But there is so little that we can control, and there's so much that's out of our control. So we just got to focus on us, on getting better, coming to the gym, and really putting in greater work.
Speaking of things going down, a couple of things did go down yesterday. First, the Raptors shipped out Ochai Agbaji. That, for all intents and purposes, was a luxury tax move. The Raptors get essentially nothing in return. And then late last night, after their game against the Timberwolves, the Raptors added Trace Jackson-Davis. He is a center, not maybe the center that Raptors fans wanted, more of a depth option. But that is still a move ahead of the deadline, and we'll see if there are any other shoes to drop before the deadline today.
Well, speaking of deadlines, we're getting to the Olympic Games now. Good and bad news for Canada as we close in on tomorrow's opening ceremonies.
Yeah, we'll start with the good news. Canada's mixed doubles curling team took on Czechia yesterday. Brett Gallant and Jocelyn Peterman get the win 10-5. And that mixed doubles curling team right back at it. They have a match against Norway coming up, in just about 7 minutes from now. But the bad news we should get to as well. Mark McMorris, the Canadian snowboarder, crashed in the middle of training yesterday, had to be airlifted off of the hill. Now, McMorris is apparently okay. He's out of hospital. He's back in the Olympic Village. But the qualifying for the big air competition is tonight, and we don't yet know if McMorris will be well enough to compete. We understand that decision is coming up about 90 minutes from now. But, of course, McMorris wants to compete, and all of Canada wants to see him compete as well. So we'll see what happens later today.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Marcy.
Paul McGowan with sports this morning. The commute's been pretty good. If you have a big problem to tell us about, though, please pass it along to us here on the commuter line. 788-3093 under that beautiful pinky purple sky once again. We just had some beautiful skies here in the prairies this winter. Well, coming up on Friday, there's a very special event happening. This is the Manitoba Chinese Business Gala, and we have 4 tickets to give away. So stay tuned. We'll tell you how you can win and what stories we're looking for in the listener line today. Right now, though, your CBC Manitoba News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 7:30. It's -2, and yes, we are melting. A high today of 2. It's going to become cloudy, though, and then tonight, some rain showers, which will change to flurries as our temperature plummets overnight. High school students in the Hanover School Division no longer have internet on school-issued laptops overnight. The rule restricts online access between midnight and 6 in the morning to encourage better sleeping habits. Steinbach Regional Secondary School student Taylor Lewis says while lots of classmates complain about being tired, it's not necessarily because of their laptop use.
I feel like a lot of that is due to their own personal lives and not due to school-related things. Yeah. Like people are go out with friends or watching movies or whatever, but I feel like the school thing hasn't really been affected as much, and people have their own devices. Like if they're going to stay out, they're going to use something else.
The grade 11 student often studies or finishes homework in the evening when she has free time. The restrictions were put in place Monday to coincide with the first day of the new semester. Manitoba Hydro is planning to bring in 3 institutional safety officers for its downtown Portage Avenue headquarters. The public atrium there has been closed since a violent incident last week when a man with a knife assaulted a Hydro employee. A spokesperson with Manitoba Hydro says they're hiring 3 security staff with safety officer training. Safety officers have the ability to restrain, detain, and arrest suspects. The building remains in lockdown with no timeline for it to reopen to the public. As Manitoba's premier talks up the economic benefits of a Port of Churchill expansion, a Winnipeg economist warns it will take time for tax revenue to flow into provincial coffers if that mega project goes ahead. Philip Serene at the University of Winnipeg says it'll take 5 to 10 years before the benefits start.
Projects are notoriously hard to get going, in terms of the approvals, environmental reviews. Things take so much longer, and in many cases they end up being way more expensive than people had anticipated.
Premier Wab Kinew has promised to wean Manitoba off federal transfer payments by 2040. Federal transfers to this province will increase to $5 billion during the fiscal year beginning in April. Dozens of support workers in Winnipeg are helping make the evacuation more comfortable for elders and young families from Pimicikamak. More than 100 people have returned to the Cree Nation, but thousands are still out of their homes following a power outage that led to frozen and damaged pipes. Jackie Anderson at Ganichip has a group working to help the elders. Anderson says they get daily visits at their hotel rooms, and the agency collects donations of wild meat, fish, and hosts fish fries.
As much as we want to provide them, meals from the hotels, we are hearing from the elders just how the processed food or not eating food that maybe you and I take for granted because we have access to it, but it's making them sick.
Anderson says one worker taught some elders how to knit and crochet, and they are also providing games, puzzles, and books. It has now been 1 year since the first measles case of Manitoba's outbreak was reported, and there is no sign the spread is slowing down. The highly contagious disease has infected more than 370 people in 12 months. Around 8 in every 10 measles cases were reported in the Southern Health Region. Devinder Singh is the region's medical officer of health and says vaccination is the only way to curb the spread.
Outbreak could be over in a month or 6 weeks, if everyone who was not immunized and susceptible chose to get immunized.
While symptoms of the virus generally last just weeks, 16 children with the illness needed to be hospitalized in the last year. We are expecting Prime Minister Mark Carney to announce a new electric vehicle policy today. Sources say it will include the return of EV rebates for consumers, and it appears the government will be scrapping the current EV sales mandate. You can hear more on that story coming up on World Report at 8. A Pride March is coming to Winkler for the first time, and the reaction has the mayor speaking up. In a Facebook post, Henry Siemens urges everyone to be respectful. He writes, while he and City Council don't support the beliefs or ideologies of every event happening in Winkler, they support people's freedom to plan and host their own events. Pauline Emerson-Froby is with the Pembina Valley Pride, the group putting on Winkler's first Pride.
In our experience, the most hateful and hurtful voices are often the loudest, and they don't always represent the larger community of quieter supporters in the community.
The march is scheduled for June. Bit of a blowout at Canada Life Centre.
Goes! Connor puts it to the net. Power play goal. Jets strike first.
Kyle Connor in the first period on Sportsnet. But that was it for Winnipeg as the Montreal Canadiens humbled the Jets 5-1, a loss going into the 3-week Olympic break. Head coach Scott Arniel hopes it's a reset time for his team.
When we get back, it's 29 games in 51 days. And it's coming every other night, so it's going to be a lot of work in front of us.
The Jets are sending 4 players to the Olympics. Josh Morrissey for Canada, Kyle Connor and Connor Hellebuck will play for Team USA, and Nino Niederreiter for Switzerland. Arniel notes that this is the Jets' 7th loss in their last 10 games. Winnipeg next plays February 25th in Vancouver. You can find more news updated throughout the day at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right, thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Well, today feels like the middle of March, April maybe even, Abby. It's warm and wet out in Winnipeg at least.
It sure does feel that way. Mild conditions to start, and this is spreading across most of the southern regions today. We get to enjoy sunshine. Well, I'm already tracking sunrise coming up about 7:56. So before 8 o'clock, you should see the sun make its full appearance in the southern region, while up north, most of the regions bracing for, falling temperatures and sharp wind chills. Winnipeg right now at the Forks, we're tracking -2 there, and at the airport, it's saying -7. Partly cloudy skies we do have. Conditions would hover near -4 this morning before we warm to a high of 2 degrees by lunchtime, and we'll notice that light northwest breeze in the air while we enjoy some sunshine all morning. Across the southern regions, we're looking at 1 degree and 2 degrees, and maybe some areas getting -1, -2s, while up north we're seeing temperatures between -1 and -20 at this time. For Winnipeg, we're in for some sunshine to start, and we're hovering between -2 and -7.
All right, thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
With a quick look at our commute, which has been pretty quiet, I think Sierra's in.
Yeah, and that theme continues. No calls on the commuter line. It's been quite quiet this morning, which to me sounds like a good thing because to me, that sounds like things sound like they're moving smoothly out there, which is good. But again, if there is something that is popping up on your drive this morning, whether you are here in the city or anywhere else in the province, I'd love to know what's going on out there. So you can give me a call on the CBC commuter line. That number is 204-788-3093.
Now, you're going to stick around for a second because we have tickets to give away, and here's how we're going to do this. We already have an entry, actually. I mentioned it last hour, and someone got excited. So this is the year of the horse. Horses are confident, agreeable, responsible, and And the year is expected to be, because of their nature, energetic and focused on action, freedom, and ambition, which is all lovely. But CBC is sponsor of the Manitoba Chinese Business Gala, celebrating the Year of the Horse, tomorrow night. And so it is at Club Region Event Center. I've been before. It's a really lovely event. It's an evening of networking and food. There's performances. There's awards. It's colorful. It's celebratory. And we want to give away tickets. If you want to go tomorrow night, then here's how you're going to enter. We have 2 pairs of tickets to give away. We are looking for stories about your encounters with horses, because my contention is you don't forget them, right? Whether you've ridden a horse or you've been in a sleigh ride, maybe you've gone to the races to just watch the horses. So like, what is your story about a horse? We're keeping it simple. We only want calls, 788-3205. Abby is on screen right now, but apparently you have nothing to share.
Marcy, as a kid, I grew up around farm animals.
Yeah.
It's just a horse I never really made encounters with, because I had a dream that it beat me.
Okay. So your feeling about the horse is going to be like mine, probably. My story is pretty short. One of my first dates, Sierra's got a story in a sec. One of my first dates with my husband was horseback riding. And I'm a city kid, and he's a rural kid, and he's also excellent with animals. So we're on these horses, and he's in front of me, and of course his horse is like responding, and they're one with the motion, and beautiful animals. And then my horse is like kind of nervous and going over to eat everything, and I can't control it. And I'm like, why? Why is my horse like this? And my husband just turns around, well, future husband at the time, and he goes, "It's not your horse." It's the energy of the rider. And I thought, this man can marry me because he knows who I really am. But I just love them. They're gorgeous animals. They can also be used for lots of therapeutic reasons. And Sierra's got a bit of a personal story about her family and how horses are involved.
Yeah, so my youngest sister, her name is Hallie. So if Hallie's listening, good
Hey,
morning,
Hallie.
And maybe my mom as well. Good morning. My sister participated in a program. My sister, for context, she does have autism and a couple of other, delays that we deal with in our family. And she participated in the horse program with Prairie Strides. And Prairie Strides, what they do is they offer volunteers. They're very much volunteer run. They offer therapy programs for kids who do have disabilities, to bring them in and get them on a horse and lead them around and lead them on rides. And that really, when my sister got to participate in that, it really, like, my family just noticed this love and passion for horses and how she just really connects with them, and the horses connect back with her. And it didn't really matter what horse it was, but she just loved being there. And it was a highlight of her week when she was participating in the program. And I think she participated in the program for, a good 2-3 years. It was a really kind of like stable part of our life. And even after she had to stop doing the program, because I think she aged out, we still sought opportunities to try and get her with horses, with whether it was family friends who had stables. But a couple years later, lo and behold, she now has her own horse.
Wow.
Her name is Maggie. She's a gorgeous, I'm not a horse person, so I don't know the exact breed of the horse, but she's gorgeous. She has, brown spots on her. She has a white coat.
What did you notice about your sister in terms of, you said she really connected? Would she immediately, relax or laugh, or like, was it joy? What would her mood be like when she was connecting with the animals?
It was just joy and a sense of like calm, because sometimes she's very on edge and thinking about and concerned about other things that are going on. And so it's nice to see, it was so lovely to see her centered and just almost, this is so cliche, but one with the horse.
Yeah, no,
and
it's
just
not.
Connected and, calm but happy as well. And seeing that joy that these horses can bring, and especially in like a therapeutic setting. It's therapeutic, but it doesn't feel it that way.
They're very, very special animals.
They're fascinating.
Thank you for sharing, Sierra.
Of course, no.
Beautiful story to kick off this. So that's what we're looking for. And as you can see, there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can share a story. But what's your story about a horse? If you share this morning, 788-3205, we're only taking calls. 204 anywhere in Manitoba, 204-788-3205. We'll play some of those calls in the program coming up after 8 o'clock. So call now, 788-3205. And then we will take calls until about 10 o'clock this morning. We'll close the contest. And then we'll find out tomorrow who is going to the Chinese Lunar New Year, the 2026 Manitoba Chinese Business Gala. And it is tomorrow night at Club Region Event Center. So we're looking for stories about a horse. Well, I can't help notice that my next guest guest has a backdrop that looks like it should have horses in it when I'm watching where she is on Zoom. She's here to talk about a rural community club that's supporting women and girls in sport with the launch of something new, a fund. St. Andrew's Community Club introducing their STACC Girls in Sport Fund this weekend. They want to acknowledge community athletes and leaders with bursaries. They want opportunities to bring programming to keep women and girls in sport. And the not-for-profit is raising funds at their launch event Saturday. They're seeing community members and small businesses already making donations. St. Andrews, as you likely know, is in a rural municipality just north of Winnipeg. And Jen Meixner is standing by. She's president of the St. Andrews Community Club. Hey there.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So what is that backdrop behind you?
This is the St. Andrews Community Club.
Very cool.
at this beautiful time of day.
Yeah, I love that. Sun coming up. And of course, anywhere in the rural area, you're going to see horses and you're going to see athletes. What's the challenge with women and girls in sport in rural areas and getting them involved?
Yeah, I think when you're in a rural community, you don't have as much access to sports. So definitely the travel is a limitation. People are farther apart. There's less people. So in terms of building or highlighting athletes and role models and things like that, it's not as accessible. And so, we have less sites, less sports. A lot of our families need to travel to Winnipeg or to other places if their girls want to continue to compete outside of school. So those are some of the challenges that girls and women face in the community.
Are the challenges different for girls and women compared to boys and men?
I do think so. I think there's a lot more opportunities because the sports are better established for the boys and men. And I really like that you also include the boys and the men because, I think sometimes we also forget about the importance of sport for adults and parents as well. So for example, in our area, there are recreational leagues for hockey for men, but not for women. Those are just some of the differences for us.
Which is a huge deal because then, as you said, to try to find something, if you can, you're traveling, which is not ideal. Where did the idea come from for this initiative for the fund you're setting up here?
You know what? It's really nice. So we are a not-for-profit community club. We are entirely volunteer run. And then we hire community members to work at our arena and our summer camps and things like that. And so this actually started back in the summer. We had a really great group of activity camp leaders, these young women, out of high school for the first couple of years, but had grown up as athletes, were still involved in sport. And we just, through conversation, started saying like, wow, we have a lot of really great young athletes in our community. We need to celebrate them. We need to acknowledge them. And how can we build in natural role models in our community to keep younger girls in sport? So it really came from, some young athletes in our community. And the community center was really excited to support that initiative.
Tell me more than what you're hoping to do with this fund, because you're already getting donations from the community.
Yeah.
I mentioned sort of just briefly you want to, and you kind of nodded to role models being acknowledged.
Yeah. So we want to be able to acknowledge and provide bursaries or awards to female athletes and also sport leaders. So the plan is that we'll kind of have 2 bursaries that would happen each year. And then in addition to that, depending on our funds and our fundraising success, would be also to provide programming involved or targeted to bring more opportunities, because that's one of the things to getting girls involved in sport is having access to lots of different things to try. That's low barrier. So we want to bring more in. Our community club has a long history of being a hockey club, a ringette club, and we want to diversify some of the activities to hopefully engage more young people and people across the lifespan.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing with your launch on Saturday.
Yeah, okay. So we're starting off with a pancake breakfast in the morning, 9 a.m. It's going to be by donation while supplies last. And then we kind of have our formal launch program starting at 10. We've got some female athletes and female sport leaders that are going to come talk about their experiences and the importance of these types of acknowledgements and opportunities. And then we have at 11 o'clock different activity stations. So we've got Ringette Manitoba coming out to do, try Ringette for free. We've got skating program on our ice surface, and then in our hall we've got some step aerobics and some activity leaders that are going to be working with kids, playing some games and doing some physical activity there.
So like a gathering and then also some exposure to all kinds of different sport. I love that. Have an awesome time on Saturday, Jen. Thank you very much for joining us this morning and telling us about how you're starting something new in St. Andrews.
Yes, thank you for having us.
That is you take care too. That's Jen Meixner. She's president of the St. Andrews Community Club, joining us from there this morning as they launch their STACC Girls in Sport Fund on Saturday. So it runs from 9 to 5, as she said, St. Andrews Community Club, just north of Winnipeg in the RM. For more information, they do have a really vibrant Facebook page. Time right now is 11 minutes to 8 o'clock, and let's dig into a story that's been in the news this morning. Late night scrolling is over for students in the Hanover School Division, at least on the laptops that they borrow from the school. The division's going to restrict internet access from midnight to 6 a.m. on their laptops after it noticed some students were on the internet late into the night. The ban began yesterday. CBC's Jura McElwraith went to Steinbach Regional Secondary School, where she spoke with grade 11 students Tyler Lewis and Jasper Howitt about how these new rules impact them.
Sometimes, if I have studying or assignments to get caught up on, I only have time later in the evenings, so with the restrictions that are happening, I feel like it'll be harder for me to get things done in the time frame that I have after school if I'm doing other things. And since I don't have a problem with my sleep, I feel like I can get it done, just fine without any problems in the morning. I feel like my sleep won't be affected. And for people that don't have other devices that they can use, I feel like that could be a problem for them.
What time do you normally go to bed?
Probably 11 o'clock, midnight, somewhere around there. Sometimes it's later if I have other things to do, but...
So you kind of self-regulate?
Yeah.
And for yourself,
probably the same. It honestly just depends what I have going on for the day.
Okay. Yeah. And what time do you normally go to bed as well?
Honestly, it depends. I can go to bed from anywhere 10 to 1 a.m.
Okay. Do you notice other students in your classes being tired in class?
Yeah, definitely. Especially for the ones who are in band or choir and stuff like that. They have a lot going. Extracurriculars. They have a lot going on, and having to slam everything into the day and not being able to work on it at home or at night it's just really stressful during the day.
Yeah, for sure. Do you notice a lot of tired classes?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of complaints, but I feel like a lot of that is due to their own personal lives and not due to school related things. Yeah. People are go out with friends or watching movies or whatever, but I feel like the school thing hasn't really been affected as much, and people have their own devices. If they're going to stay out, they're going to use something else.
Yeah.
That was SRSS grade 11 students Tyler Lewis and Jasper Howitt speaking with CBC's Jura McElwraith. Now, Tracy Viancourt is a professor in the Faculty of Education at the University of Ottawa, but also Canada Research Chair in Youth Mental Health and Violence Prevention. Good morning.
Good morning.
So when you hear about this idea, a school division enforcing a rule like this on their own laptops, what are your thoughts on that?
I love it. I think it's long overdue. I think every school board should probably follow their lead. It's absolutely what should be done. Young people need a lot of sleep. They may think they don't need a lot of sleep, but they need a lot of sleep to function. Our evidence, we have a really large study of over 300,000 kids in Ontario from grades 4 to grade 12. We noticed that when they scroll on their mobile devices before they go to bed, they're twice as likely to miss school because of fatigue. So it's an important thing to address.
So I'm guessing when you were hearing the students talk there about being on their devices and their relationship with their sleep and their screen time, it would probably echo a lot of what you've heard.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the young woman that was speaking was saying that she didn't need a lot of sleep. So she might be the exception. I'm not going to challenge what she says. It's her life. But for the most part, young people need a lot of sleep. They should be getting at a minimum 7 to 8 hours of sleep uninterrupted, and that's not what's happening. Our studies show that they're having a harder time falling asleep and staying asleep. Their sleep patterns kind of look like senior citizens, where they have difficulties in those areas as well.
Except the next day, maybe a senior citizen doesn't have to focus in class. What's the impact
Exactly.
on what's the impact on a young person if they lack sleep?
If they lack sleep, everything. I mean, one of the things, obviously, if we talk about academic indicators, they're less likely to be attentive. They have a harder time concentrating. Their work product isn't as good. Those sorts of things are affected. So academic achievement, but sleep is a really important mental health indicator as well. So people who have more difficulties with their mental health also report having poor sleep. Sometimes it's a consequence of having poor mental health, but sometimes the poor sleep results in poor mental health. So there's a very strong link between health and sleep, mental and physical health. So beyond the academic indicators, this is also important for their wellness.
Someone might be saying this could be one step too far because between midnight and 6, you're off hours, it gets into personal life. And on the academic side, what if a student is a late night crammer or an early morning study kid? What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that it's not based in science, and I always make decisions that are based in science. I don't think young people should be up that late anyhow. They have to get to school the next day and be ready to learn. These are devices that are shared by the school board, so obviously they're implicated in it. What they're doing with the device that they're sharing with them has implications for how students are achieving. Their ultimate goal is to make sure that students are successful, and this is a very important step towards that.
What are your thoughts on France and Australia? We've been doing a lot of reporting on their restrictions on social media. Do you think Canada should be doing the same? It's complex because not everybody likes the idea of a restriction and thinks it'll make a difference. I'm curious what your thoughts are.
I absolutely agree with it as well. In fact, I just presented to the Canada Senate last night. It was about other forms of restriction towards accessing pornography for young people. Obviously, they shouldn't be accessing it, and there should be age verifications. I think that we need to be looking really closely at the effects of social media, not from a moral panic perspective, but really looking at what the research is showing and protecting young people. I don't think that we need to be scrolling, all the time. There's a lot of dependency. 95% of young people are using these platforms, and 50% of them are using it constantly. So it's interfering with their relationships, face-to-face relationships. It's interfering with their homework, with their sleep. So yeah, we should be thinking about this more broadly.
And what do you say to parents when they ask about helping to limit that late night scrolling or get their kids off devices without getting too much up in their personal business, which can affect relationships?
It's a great question. So our advice would be for any parent out there, have your child put away their device at least 1 hour before they go to sleep. They really need to ramp down. The ambient light is not good for getting to sleep. It's a distraction. Sometimes if they get up in the middle of the night to go to the washroom, they go back on their phones and it restarts the cycle. So get the phones out of or devices, whatever they're on, out of their rooms an hour before they go to sleep.
Always valuable to have you on with us with your perspective. Thank you very much, Tracy.
Thank you. Take care.
You as well. That's Tracy Vaillancourt. She's the Canada Research Chair in Youth Mental Health and Violence Prevention, applauding what the Hanover School Division has done here. So if you want to read more about this restriction on the the school laptops for kids, they now are not going to be able to be accessed between midnight and 6 o'clock in the morning for students. You can go to our story online at cbc.ca/Manitoba. And as mentioned, hear more from students that CBC Manitoba spoke with out in Steinbach. And if you want to weigh in, I always invite you to weigh in on everything, but you can call the listener line 204-788-3205. Now, speaking of the listener line, we are getting calls about your horse stories, and that's what we're looking for. Not your horse stories, but your horse, like the animal stories. We want to see if you want to go to the Canadian Business Gala that's happening tomorrow night. CBC Manitoba's Chinese community celebrating the year of the horse. And so we want to hear your stories. We have 4 tickets to give away to this gala. It's a lovely event, food, colorful, fun, cultural celebration, and it's a Club Region Events Center. We're only taking calls till 10 o'clock this morning, 788-3205. So we'll play some calls after 8. Also after 8 o'clock, Canada has issued a travel advisory for Cuba due to worsening shortages of electricity, fuel, and basic necessities. So we're going to hear more around what's driving that, how serious it is, and reaction with the co-chair of the Canadian network on Cuba. So stay tuned. We'll get that perspective coming up. It is at -2 in Winnipeg. Our high today is 2 degrees above. Mix of sun and cloud. And if you need us in the morning drive, it's 788-3093 as we just have some low-lying cloud cover in downtown Winnipeg actually now. Heather Wells is in with other developing stories this morning on CBC. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, Manitoba Hydro is planning to bring in 3 institutional safety officers for its downtown Portage Avenue headquarters. That public atrium has been closed since a violent incident last week when a man with a knife assaulted a Hydro employee. Safety officers have the ability to restrain, detain, and arrest suspects, and that building remains in lockdown. It has now been 1 year since the first measles case of Manitoba's outbreak was reported, and there is no sign the spread is slowing down. The highly contagious disease has infected more than 370 people in 12 months. Around 8 of every 10 measles cases were reported in the Southern Health region. We're going to hear from that region's medical officer of health coming up in our next local news at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
National and international news on CBC is next. It's 1 minute to 8 o'clock on your Wednesday morning. Thursday morning. Woo, further in the week than we thought. Lots of mild weather ahead. Stay with us.
On cue. I'm Garby Bailey in for Tom Power. Tanya Tahak has always turned live experience into art, in music, on the page, and now on stage. She joins us to talk about Split Tooth, her acclaimed book based in part on her own personal journals, and how she's bringing that story to life on stage.
And just let the sound take me.
Q, this morning at 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on CBC Listen, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current with Matt Galloway.
It's called the singles tax, all the things like paying rent, utilities, and food for just one person that make life more expensive. And it means Canadians who aren't part of a couple are falling behind financially. We'll talk about what it's like to pay the singles tax coming up on The Current.
Marcia Young. Prime Minister Mark Carney is expected to unveil his government's national automotive strategy today. The highly anticipated announcement is likely to affect several Trudeau-era policies, including ones on electric vehicles. Janice McGregor is in our parliamentary bureau. And Janice, why did the government have to rethink its approach?
Marcia, a strategy doesn't work if it isn't incentivizing the right things. The previous EV mandate was focused on climate goals, but then the threat of losing Canada's industry altogether emerged, and companies that have invested in Canadian automotive production facilities warned they were on track to lose up to $3 billion if the federal government stuck with a scheme that rewarded companies to import EVs. Brian Kingston from the Vehicle Manufacturers Association.
The way the mandate worked, 95% of existing production here in Canada today was going to be made illegal for sale in 9 years. That's not a good message to send to auto companies that are thinking about how do they keep their footprint in this country.
Sources say this new strategy is going to put the focus back on emissions targets, a system of standards and credits to reward companies to improve fuel efficiency, as well as produce more hybrids and fully electric vehicles. This change is intended to stop undermining the competitiveness of existing Canadian facilities. Flavio Volpe from the Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association.
At a moment when the White House is attacking the Canadian automotive businesses' right to exist, that we set up systems that make those investments by Toyota in Woodstock, by Ford in Oakville stronger, not weaker.
So those are some of the incentives for manufacturers. What about consumers?
The previous federal program that offset the cost of a new electric vehicle by $5,000 ran out of money. It was so heavily subscribed. It wasn't renewed in last fall's budget, but Radio-Canada has learned the $5,000 rebates are coming back. We need to watch to see today if these rebates boost brands that build those EVs at Canadian facilities instead of just importing.
Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Janice McGregor in Ottawa. Several Toronto police officers have been arrested. It is in connection with a criminal investigation of the tow truck industry. The Toronto Police Association confirms it is aware of the arrests and says it will ensure due process. Michelle Song reports.
Multiple sources tell CBC News as many as 9 members of Toronto police are arrested over charges related to violent crimes involving the tow trucking industry in the Greater Toronto area. Those officers are accused of trafficking, leaking addresses to hitmen, and leaking police officer addresses, as well as conspiracy to murder a unit commander at Toronto's South Detention Centre. A source says York Regional Police led the investigation, and it will be holding a press conference today with Toronto Police Service. CBC News is not naming the sources as they are not authorized to share details publicly. Frank Cormier is a criminology professor at the University of Manitoba.
Police are notoriously reluctant, to investigate their own and charge their own unless, the evidence is overwhelmingly clear.
The towing industry has been plagued by violence across the Greater Toronto area. Toronto police arrested 20 people last summer over allegations of planning and organizing violent acts in the towing industry. More than 100 charges were laid. Ian Scott is the former director of the Special Investigations Unit.
These very serious sets of charges suggest that there needs to be more oversight in the police department, and there also needs to be much more oversight of the towing industry.
Sources say 2 of the officers appeared in court Wednesday, and the other officers will be appearing in court today. Michelle Song, CBC News, Toronto.
U.S. President Donald Trump is responding to pressure over immigration enforcement in Minneapolis. In a new interview, Trump defended his approach. He also answered questions about Iran. CBC's Willie Lowry joins us from Washington. And Willie, Trump was asked about the fallout in Minneapolis. What did he say?
Yeah, President Donald Trump acknowledged that a softer approach in Minnesota might have been better. This, of course, comes after 2 U.S. citizens were killed by ICE agents there last month. But he doubled down on the need for his immigration crackdown.
We allowed to come into our country people the likes of which no country would accept, and we're getting them out.
Trump said in the wake of Minneapolis he no longer wants to force his way into cities, but rather wait for local and state officials to request federal help.
Trump was also asked about the negotiations with Iran. What did he say?
The U.S. president has been supportive of Iranian protesters and threatened to use U.S. military might to further deter Iran's nuclear ambitions. The countries are set to meet tomorrow in Oman for much anticipated talks. The American delegation will be led by the U.S. Special Envoy for the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, and the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. The Iranians by Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. These will be the first talks since Washington bombed Iran's nuclear facilities back in June.
Thank you, Willie.
My pleasure.
The CBC's Willie Lowry in Washington. Farmers in Saskatchewan and Alberta say gophers are devastating their crops. They want Ottawa to lift the 2-year-old ban on a powerful pesticide. The provinces asked the federal government to allow the use of strychnine. Helena Mahalik has the story.
You'll see literal bare patches in the field and gophers scurrying around.
Wade Nelson, a southern Alberta farmer, is no stranger to the damage Richardson ground squirrels, widely called gophers on the prairies, can have on crops. 3 years ago, 170 acres of his canola were eaten up by the rodents. He says with no pesticide as strong as strychnine, they just keep coming back.
It's an ongoing issue. It always has been. And strychnine is just one of the only real true defenses against gopher populations.
Saskatchewan and Alberta say they will continue fighting for the pesticide. James Thorstenson with the Saskatchewan Ministry of Agriculture says the 2 provinces have written a new letter to Ottawa this week expressing their concerns.
In the letter, it mentions that billions of dollars of damage across Canada every year on damage by gophers.
Health Canada says the 2024 ban on strychnine was aimed at protecting non-target animals, like the swift fox and burrowing owl. But John Barlow, the federal Conservative Shadow Minister for Agriculture, says there's ways to use the pesticide safely.
Farmers who would be using this product would have to go through a stringent safety protocol.
The Grain Growers of Canada say without an effective method to control gophers, food availability and affordability for Canadians will be impacted down the line. Helena Mahalik, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Dozens of people in Yukon say packages they mailed weeks ago never arrived. Canada Post confirms police are investigating what happened to these parcels. As Isabella Calisi reports, the Postal Service became aware of the missing packages after customers complained.
Doesn't Canada Post track the mail? Is it just up to us with our receipts and our tracking numbers?
Annie Elliston mailed Christmas gifts to her family in southern BC on December 18th. And more than a month later, the tracking numbers still say the packages haven't left Whitehorse. She posted on Facebook and got dozens of responses from people who said they were dealing with the same thing. So Ellison called up Canada Post.
The fact that Canada Post didn't realize that this high number of parcels had disappeared en route before individuals and myself started reporting missing parcels.
Canada Post then confirmed with the CBC that police are investigating. Stephanie Lawson also had 2 packages destined for her family go missing. And as a small business owner, she says disappearing parcels can mean major added costs.
If I was shipping out to a customer, then likely I would have had to refund my customer, taken on the shipping cost, lost that sale, all for a package that I can't get anything back for.
Lawson says without photos, receipts, and tracking numbers, it can be hard to claim insurance on what you've lost.
It's not the customer's always right in their case.
The RCMP and Canada Post would not comment, citing the active investigation. Isabella Calisi, CBC News, Whitehorse.
And finally, the women's Olympic hockey game between Team Canada and Team Finland, scheduled for today, has been postponed. Olympic organizers say the decision was made after cases of norovirus were identified within the Finnish team following consultations with medical officials. The game will now be played on February 12th. And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. News anytime, cbcnews.ca. I'm Marcia Young.
Good morning, Manitoba. I'm Marcy Marcusa. Thanks for joining us here on this Thursday morning. Really mild in southern Manitoba. You're on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on that app and YouTube. This is CBC's Information Radio, and this half hour on the program, we're going to be talking about Cuba. Canada, as you likely know, is telling travelers to be extra cautious if you're planning to head to Cuba. One Cuban Canadian says, though, Canadians should not be rushing to cancel their trips. We are going to break that down. One of the travel advisory reasons, or some of them, are due to worsening shortages in Cuba of electricity, fuel, and basic necessities. So we're going to walk through these concerns. Also, we have calls to play. You've been calling our listener line this morning for a chance to win 2 pairs of tickets. So we're going to have 2 winners to tomorrow night's 2026 Manitoba Chinese Business Gala. We're celebrating the Year of the Horse, so you've been calling with your horse encounters. We'll still take calls, 788-3205 if you have a story. Contest closes at 10, but we'll get into some of those entries this half hour. Right now, let's go to Heather Wells. She's here with our News Center headlines. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, high school students in the Hanover School Division no longer have internet access overnight on school-issued laptops. Online access is now restricted between midnight and 6 in the morning. The assistant superintendent there says the division felt it was right to set overnight boundaries and also try to improve students' sleeping habits. Manitoba Hydro is planning to bring in 3 institutional safety officers for its downtown Portage Avenue headquarters. The atrium has been closed to the public since a violent incident last week when a man with a knife assaulted a Hydro worker. A spokesperson at Hydro says they're hiring 3 security staff with safety officer training next week. I'll be back with more Manitoba news coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
Abby, the weather today, we've been celebrating in the south.
Yes, Marcy, a tale of 2 systems. I will tell you, the south enjoys a mild day, sunshine already out there, while we're looking at the north, bracing for that sharp plunge. Some northern areas already feeling the wind chills close to minus 39 with light snow falling towards Churchill this morning. Down south, we're seeing temperatures around 0 to minus 7. We're headed for a high of 2 degrees in Winnipeg, about 4 degrees for the Pembina Valley region and into the Parkland region. We will enjoy lots of sunshine, so enjoy it while it lasts. Some cloudy conditions will roll in by the noon period, bringing a risk of evening freezing, rain and flurries before the mercury crashes even further tonight. Up north, different story, Marcy. We're seeing 1 degree in the Par and then minus 20 as you travel further north. The mercury is really falling fast around Thompson and Churchill this morning. We will see afternoon lows between minus 19 and minus 27 with wind chill close to minus 40. So overall, mild start for us in the southern part of the province, though we're bracing for that shift to cooler air. Some flurries will be starting to roll in the evening period. But for Winnipeg right now, we're hovering around minus 4. We're heading for a lunch hour high of 2 degrees with a mix of sun and clouds. So don't get comfortable. It's going to get cold overnight.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Let's get into some things happening on your morning commute with Sierra Sanders.
Yeah, good morning, Marcy. Commuter line is still pretty quiet. Haven't gotten very many calls this morning, but Winnipeg Traffic Management Center is reporting lights are blank in all directions at Portage and St. Charles. So you want to make sure you're treating that as an all-way stop or four-way stop before you get to that intersection, and be patient with your fellow drivers as you navigate that situation. So again, that's lights out in all directions at Portage and St. Charles. You want to be careful around there as well. Still seeing highways around Winnipeg, northeast of Winnipeg, also to the west on Highway 1 as partially covered. So be aware of that if you are getting out on the highways this morning or today in general, and check Manitoba 511 before you do that for up-to-date situations, conditions, and anything else that is going on. Still a little bit of time left in the show, so if something does pop up on your commute this morning, whether you are here in the city or anywhere else in the province, I'd love to hear about it. The number to call is 204-788-3093.
Well, as I mentioned, the Government of Canada is urging a, quote, high degree of caution for travelers to Cuba. It cites worsening shortages of electricity, fuel, and basic necessities, including food, water, and medicine, which can also affect resorts. Officials warn the situation is unpredictable. It could worsen quickly. It could potentially affect services and even flight availability on short notice. So this warning comes amid the U.S.'s blockade on Cuba's oil supply as well. Canadians remain Cuba's largest group of visitors. Often people go to find some heat. Right now, I just checked, it's 24 degrees on average in Cuba. Here in Manitoba, we do have a small number of those who are Cuban living here, just about 260 people as part of our population. We are joined now by the co-chair of the Canadian Network on Cuba, though, Cuban-Canadian Julio Fonseca, who is with us to weigh in on this travel advisory. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Thank you for having me.
So how do you feel about this travel advisory being issued by Canada?
Well, I think the travel advisory is kind of exaggerated. Nothing is going to happen in Cuba, and Canadians have been enjoying the warmth, both literally and physically, for years. And in fact, despite all these external narratives that the situation is dire, it is not. The advisory also mentions that the hotels and the resorts are also affected by the shortages. They are not. The resorts and hotels are provided with autonomous energy sources. They have generators and they have all the supplies they need. So I would tell Canadians who, again, want to travel to Cuba and enjoy the warmth, do go to Cuba. Nothing is going to happen. You will be taken care of. And I think this is a very important moment for Canadians to show their solidarity and love for Cuba. So this is a moment where Cuba needs tourism for its economy in the context of all the aggression and the sanctions of the United States. So no, the advisory is kind of exaggerated in my own opinion.
Tell me more about your confidence in what you're saying this morning and how you know this. So you've already you've talked about, just if I may, you talked about the resorts having electricity and generators. So that's one reason why you're saying, that they shouldn't be including resorts, that they're going to be able to operate. But what about the safety pieces and such? What are you hearing from people in Cuba, and what's giving you this confidence?
All right. Well, as a Cuban who is in touch with Cuba daily, with family and friends, I can assure you that Cuba continues to be the safest destination for Canadian tourists in the world. So no concerns about their safety. I'm in touch with the Ministry of Tourism, and they say that operations are running smoothly. In fact, if anything, Canadian tourists' numbers have increased in the last few months. So I am quite certain and confident that there is no threat to the security of anybody in Cuba, any tourists.
So what sense do you make then of the of the warning that is coming from the government of Canada around this?
What I said, I think everybody should be careful everywhere they go, because things may happen anywhere. But I think this advisory plays around the narrative of the United States, who are, as you know, in a war, undeclared war against the Cuban people. And so they think, because this is a very similar travel advisory that as the one issued by the US. In other words, it's politics. They want to add the last nail in the coffin, according to their interpretation of the situation. But no, I don't think the travel advisory is really based on information in the ground.
If Canadians then have trips booked, what should they realistically expect if they go in terms of the shortages that we are being told about for electricity, you mentioned, but also fuel, basic necessities? Should there be anything to be prepared about in your view and with the information you're working with?
Well, they should be prepared because they are visiting a developing country with limitations, basically due to the blockade of the United States. Take certain precautions, but you can still go. You can still go. These shortages and these problems do not affect tourists in Cuba. They are not affected by this. So take your usual medication that you take if you need. Take stuff that you want to donate to locals, as Canadians have been doing for years, but still go and enjoy it and see the reality by yourselves. And just see what is happening.
And just last, Julio, what are you hearing about how the things I've mentioned are affecting your family, then the blackouts and such?
Well, my family, as all Cubans there, are affected by these sanctions of the United States, which is trying to suffocate, to asphyxiate the Cuban economy. So my family is, of course, subjected to all these sanctions and shortages, etc. But life in Cuba continues as usual. It is true that there are shortages, but that hasn't stopped Cuba from anything. Life in Cuba continues smoothly as usual.
Thank you very much for your perspective and your information this morning. Thank you for being with us.
It is a pleasure. It is a pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Live with us on CBC via Zoom, that was Julio Fonseca, a Cuban Canadian. He's also the co-chair of the Canadian Network on Cuba, weighing in on his perspective on the government of Canada, which has now put out a quote, urging a quote, high degree of caution for travelers to Cuba.
The year of the horse gallops in, and CBC invites you to celebrate. Experience the 2026 Manitoba Chinese Business Gala, February 6th at Club Regent Event Center. An evening of networking, food, performances, and awards. Celebrate the Chinese Lunar New Year and recognize the remarkable contributions of Manitoba's Chinese business community. Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for more.
So you heard it. This is tomorrow, and we have 2 pairs of tickets to give away. I've been to this. It's a really lovely gala. There's obviously a lot of culture celebrated. There's food. There's it's just colorful and lovely and beautiful. And it's also just a great venue out there at Club Region Event Center. So if you want to go, we asked you to enter by telling us your stories about an encounter with a horse.
Hi, my name is Krista, and my horse story is when I was little, and me and my brother, we went to my auntie's farm, and they had horses, and of course, my brother's obsessed with horses, and sure enough, this horse literally stepped on his foot, and once, got the horse off of him, my grandma, back in the day, that's just how it was. She literally smacked him in the head just because it was like almost his fault, but it wasn't. Anyway, that's my horse story. Thanks.
Loretta Hominick. The story is I was 10 years old, and I was riding a horse that belonged to a friend of mine, and we ended up going to a stop sign in our little town. We turned right. A car honked its horn. My horse took off with me on the back of it with no saddle, just bareback. It actually jumped the ditch, stopped, and I went flying over the hedge and landed on the other side of the hedge unharmed, got back on the horse, and away we went to the beach to ride along the beach.
Hi there, my name is Alexander Wishart. Growing up, I was always around horses, whether it was with my mom taking photos at the harness races or, showing up at Pony Club or Hunter Jumper, and I really think they're beautiful animals. They've played a pretty quintessential part of my life.
Good morning. My name's Kurt Weber. Several years ago, my friend and I went on a vacation out to see his brother somewhere around Bella Coola, BC. And the plan was to go for a horse ride. I'm thinking, okay, a couple hours on a horse, no big deal. So anyways, get out there. We had to ride all day, 8 hours on a horse. And the horse I had the most rough gait or trot or every word you want to use. And I had to hold myself off the saddle for that whole ride. And I got off that horse at the end of the day, and that evening, all the hair was gone off the inside of my legs. And I could barely walk. Anyways, it was quite a vacation.
Right? It's amazing when you've been on a horse, even for a short period of time. If you don't do this regularly, you feel it. I can't even imagine after all day long. And the story about the one that took off and you didn't have a saddle, what do you even hang on to? When the horse jumps the ditch, maybe you don't. I'm glad everybody's still with us to share these stories, right? All of you are entered to win tickets. We have 2 pairs to give away for tomorrow night's 2026 Manitoba Chinese Business Gala happening at Club Region Event Center. Networking, food, performances, awards being handed out, and CBC a proud sponsor. So we're going to take calls, your horse stories, until 10 o'clock this morning. Then we're going to close the contest, and tomorrow we'll play the rest of the calls, and we'll make a random draw to see who's going out tomorrow night. So keep it free, and we will get a hold of you, and we'll keep your phone numbers on file, and good luck. 788-3205. It is 8:26 this morning. I'll tell you what, it's a beautiful day if you are on a ranch somewhere in Manitoba and you're going to go for a horseback ride because it is mild in southern Manitoba. Our high today, 2 degrees. We're going to get above zero. And already this morning, Melita was sitting at 6 degrees when we got on the air. And so we've just had some really mild temperatures already showing off today. In the north, much colder, though, so just note that. Well, we're counting down now to next month's Juno Awards, and Kaylee Cardinal is already a Juno Award-winning singer-songwriter. She's Métis from Alberta, but the tune we're playing this morning has some Manitoba connections because Joey and Dave Landreth composed the track. Here's Kaylee Cardinal on CBC 89.3. This one's called Light of the Moon.
It wasn't always easy, and I know it. Stuck between the coming and the going. No matter how wanted you to stay. Only half of your heart was ever far away. Songs pouring out from the kitchen. Your laughter ringing. Guitars in the hallway, right where you left them. These are the things that I am missing. When the sun goes down, there's still the light of the moon, and I will remember you. Well, I remember you in the bright lights, singing songs into the late night. But we all start to fade, turn to dust. Time catches up with the best of us. When the sun goes down, there's still the light of the moon, and I will remember you. If you lived 1,000 years, you'd still be gone too soon, and I will remember you. There's a silence where there was none. Rest easy now, your work is done. The ones that will follow, they bring you with them. We can hear your voice if we just listen. When the sun goes down, there's still the light of the moon, and I will remember. If you lived 1,000 years, you'd still be gone too soon, and I will remember you. Oh, when the sun goes down, there's still the light of the moon, and I will remember you.
Pretty song there, eh? That's Kaylee Cardinal, Light of the Moon. Manitoba's own Joey and Dave Landreth were composers on that track. Well, I want to mention the Radio Noon call-in today. People are reading less these days. We're asking callers, have your reading habits changed, and what do you recommend to a non-reader to get them reading again if you are a reader? Joanne Kelly is going to be helping with the call-in. Guest host Bruce Layden between 12:30 and 1 o'clock for the call-in, and you can take part by weighing in. Put your book down. Give us a call. Right now, it's time for your CBC News from Manitoba.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Heather Wells in Winnipeg at 8:30. It's -2. It is a mild Thursday. For today, we do see the temperature tank overnight tonight, but for today, enjoy it. A high of 2 as the sky clouds over. Expect some showers later in the day. High school students in Hanover School Division no longer have internet access overnight on school-issued laptops. Online access is being restricted between midnight and 6 in the morning. Assistant Superintendent Marlon Adrian says the division felt it was right to set overnight boundaries for the learning devices.
Recognizing that some students do do homework till late at night and also are up early potentially. That seemed to strike the right balance between finding a reasonable limitation.
Adrian says the move is also meant to improve students' sleeping habits. He says grades 9 through 12 students in the division have been given laptops to take home for more than a decade. Manitoba Hydro is planning to bring in 3 institutional safety officers for its downtown Portage Avenue headquarters. The public atrium has been closed since a violent incident last week when a man with a knife assaulted a Hydro worker. A spokesperson for Hydro says they are hiring 3 security security staff with safety officer training. Now, safety officers have the ability to restrain, detain, and arrest suspects. The building remains in lockdown with no timeline for it to reopen to the public. As Manitoba's premier talks up the economic benefits of a Port of Churchill expansion, a Winnipeg economist warns it'll take time for tax revenue to flow into provincial coffers if the mega project goes ahead. Philip Serene at the University of Winnipeg says it'll take 5 to 10 years for the benefits to start.
Projects are notoriously hard to get going, in terms of the approvals, environmental reviews. Things take so much longer, and in many cases, they end up being way more expensive than people had anticipated.
Wab Kinew has promised to wean Manitoba off federal transfer payments by 2040. Federal transfers to this province will increase to $5 billion during the fiscal year that begins in April. Well, it has now been 1 year since the first measles case of Manitoba's outbreak was reported. No sign the spread is slowing. The highly contagious disease has infected more than 370 people in 12 months. Around 8 in every 10 measles cases were reported in the Southern Health region. Devinder Singh is the region's medical officer of health, and he says vaccination is the only way to curb the spread.
Outbreak could be over in a month or 6 weeks, if everyone who was not immunized and susceptible chose to get immunized.
While symptoms of the virus generally last just weeks, 16 children with the illness needed to be hospitalized in the last year. Dozens of support workers in Winnipeg are helping Pimicikamak evacuees feel safer in their hotels. While more than 100 people have returned to the Cree Nation, thousands are still out of their homes after a power outage led to frozen and damaged pipes. Jackie Anderson is executive director at Gani Ganichik. Her group makes daily visits to elders at their hotels. Workers collect donations of wild meat and fish and host fish fries for the elders. Anderson says they operate a safe room, which is staffed 24/7.
A safe space for our families who just may need, a break. Like we've come across, single dads with 6 kids, all under the age of 10, right from newborns. You can't even go outside to get some air.
3,600 evacuees are still waiting to learn when they can return to their homes in Pimicikamak. Winkler's mayor is calling for respect as his city has been chosen for an upcoming Pride March. Henry Siemens took to Facebook yesterday after receiving a lot of comments about the event run by a private organization. He says he and City Council don't support the beliefs or ideologies of every event happening in Winkler, but they support people's freedom to plan and host their own events. Siemens says it is his sincere prayer everyone finds a way to respect one another.
I believe that it is important, as I mentioned in my post, that people are able to speak freely. And if there are people who have a concern, they should be able to share it. If there are people who are supportive, they should also be able to share it.
Pembina Valley Pride announced this week it would bring its annual march and rally to Winkler for the first time in June. You can find more news updated throughout the day. All you have to do is head to cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thanks, Heather Wells.
Thank you.
So thank you to our news department, Heather Wells, Megan Ketchison, Darren Bernhardt, as well as Aaron Broman out there. Thanks to Corey Funk, who's been show producing, and the senior producer of audio at CBC Manitoba, Leif Larson, and associate producers with items on today's program, producer Nadia Kidwai, as well as AP's Sophia Peralta Barone and Zubina Ahmed. Thanks, everyone, for your work. Last look at the commute with Sierra.
Still seeing the lights out in all directions at Portage and St. Charles. Make sure we're treating that as an all-way stop or four-way stop as you get into the intersection, and be patient with your fellow drivers. Again, lights out in all directions at Portage and St. Charles.
Abby.
Yeah, the southern part of the province enjoys highs close to +5 rather. Today, I almost said minus. And we'll see lows getting to -16 later in the evening. We see bitter wind chills close to -40 in the northern part of the province. Winnipeg right now, we're hovering around -4. Sunshine already here. We get to a high of 2 degrees and we enjoy it till it
Tomorrow?
turns later tonight.
Exactly. It's kind of a one-day wonder.
Enjoy it.
Surprised you didn't say minus all morning, actually.
No,
I would've.
this is all morning. It's I like it.
We all do. Okay, enjoy it, everybody. Thanks for listening. I'm Marcy Marcusa. The Current's next on CBC.